Chapter 12:28. Bang! After a while, Jean Lucio suddenly shook the black spear in his hand and performed a fatal strike. Like a black dragon swallowing the sun, he killed his opponent. A rain of light scattered. Clatter, but in the blink of an eye, the body of the first immortal general of flame was condensed again, unscathed. However, he had taken the initiative to retreat to one side. Seeing this, Jean Lucio did not stop but continued to fight. 15 minutes later, 17 immortal generals of flame had been defeated and retreated. It had to be said that among the supreme overlords, Jean Lucio's combat power was first class. However, everyone was frowning, because they could see that Jean Lucio had consumed a lot of energy in the battle, and the later his opponents fought, the stronger their combat power was. Under such circumstances, Jean Lucio had little hope to defeat all his opponents. Sure enough, after defeating the 24th opponent, Jean Lucio finally lost the battle due to exhaustion. He was panting, soaked in sweat, and his face was full of unwillingness. Such a great fortune was right in front of him, but he had to stop here. It was a great blow. Take a rest. If I have a chance to pass, I will help you find a ball of origin Taoist fire. Si Yunfeng comforted him. Jean Lucio was silent. Even if he was unwilling, he could only do so. After this incident, the others also realized that this trial wasn't going to be so easy to pass. Next, Yin Shui attacked. Her combat power was only a little better than Jean Lucio's. After defeating the 29th immortal general of flame, she could not hold on and was defeated. This made everyone look more serious and dignified. Let me. The strength of Mo Tianhe's combat strength caused everyone's eyes to light up, and they were extremely excited. However, in the end, when fighting with the 39th opponent, Mo Tianhe was also defeated. How could this be? The expressions of the others wavered indeterminately. Mo Tianhe was a weird freak, but he was defeated in the middle of the battle, which made others feel depressed. Although the fortune on the volcano in the distance was great, it would be in vain if they could not get close to it. Lin Sun had been observing from the beginning to the end, comparing and weighing in his heart, and had roughly judged the strength of those immortal generals of flame. However, the defeat of Mo Tianhe and the others still surprised Lin Sun. A thought couldn't help but appear in his mind. Exactly how should the Apex King realm be differentiated? This was a question that even the sages of the present era could not answer, because the Extinction King realm had never appeared in the past. No matter if it was Lin Sun or the other peak monarchs present here, all of them had stepped foot onto this realm while searching for it, and it could be said to be unprecedented. But at the same time, they were unable to give a clear answer regarding the strength of this realm. But now, Lin Sun had a strong thought in his mind. This realm was blank and had never existed before. Why couldn't it be defined by himself? When this idea came to his mind, Lin Sun himself was shocked. However, after he calmed down and thought about it carefully, he realized that while this idea was bold, it wasn't impossible. Cultivation was never about following the rules and keeping to the old. Instead, it was about carrying on the past and opening up the future. Since he'd cultivated in the path of the Tao that was unique since time immemorial, then he naturally had to possess the courage to be a pioneer in history and create and display something that had never happened since time immemorial. The more he thought about it, the more he couldn't suppress the impulse in his heart. But in the end, he took a deep breath and completely calmed down. Defining an eternal realm was unprecedented. If the sages of the past and present knew about it, they would probably rebuke him for being bold and presumptuous. Even the world was destined to be unable to accept it. But no matter what, Lin Sun decided to give it a try. Perhaps he didn't have the ability to convince the world at present. But one day, when he was invincible in the Extinction King realm and exhausted the profound meaning of this realm to the extreme, the division of the Extinction King realm would be determined by Lin Sun. A sigh rang out, awakening Lin Sun from his contemplation. In the distance, Ji Xingyao returned from the battlefield with a pale face and a trace of unwillingness between her eyebrows. She was also defeated by the 43rd Flame General. This made the atmosphere in the field even more solemn. "Let me do it." Si Yunfeng took a deep breath and strode out. Unfortunately, he was defeated by the 47th Flame General, and he was not far from passing the test. "Looks like only Brother Lin will be able to pass this trial successfully." Si Yunfeng smiled reluctantly. Obviously, this failure was a great blow to him. "Don't let me do it first." Old Toad, who had been waiting impatiently, rushed out first. The battle soon broke out. To everyone's surprise, this proud teenager in a green robe was so powerful that he crushed everything in his way. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. Then he realized that Old Toad was originally an ancient freak, and in terms of foundation and talent, he was not inferior to any other ancient freak at all. Old Toad must have obtained an inconceivable inheritance in the land of opportunity that burning immortal Chun Linkong had left behind, which was why his battle strength had undergone a tremendous change after he became a supreme king. But what made people sigh was that Old Toad failed in the battle with the 49th Flame General. In other words, he was only one step away from passing the test. "Damn it, come again. I don't believe it." Old Toad was so angry that he stomped his feet and cursed. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He was only one step away from obtaining the great fortune, but he was defeated at this critical juncture. It was simply too torturous. However, there was only one chance. When Old Toad tried again, he was besieged by 49 Flame Generals, who stared at him coldly. Old Toad's expression kept changing. In the end, he suppressed his unwillingness and retreated with a flick of his sleeve. At this point, Lin Sun was the only one who hadn't passed the test. "Brother Lin, now it's up to you to vent our anger." Si Yunfeng gritted his teeth and said. The others also nodded. Sharing the same hatred, they regarded those Flame Generals as irreconcilable enemies. It was truly too infuriating. Such a heaven-defying fortune just had to be obstructed by these opponents formed from the laws. No one would feel happy in their hearts. "Kill them, we must kill them!" Old Toad also shouted. Lin Sun nodded and stepped forward. Seeing this, everyone shut up and watched nervously, for fear of disturbing Lin's battle. Judging from the combat strength Brother Lin showed when he killed Wu Lingdao, the 13th Golden Crow Prince, these 49 opponents can't stop him at all. Emotian has said, "The only thing we need to worry about now is how long it will take Brother Lin to defeat these damn guys." "About 10 minutes, Si Yunfeng said in a low voice. "No, I don't think it will take more than half a quarter," Ji Xingyao answered after thinking carefully. "Half a quarter? You underestimate my brother. In my opinion, he can defeat all these in less than 49 breaths." Old Toad swore. The others couldn't help but smile, thinking this statement was a little exaggerated. If those Flame Generals were a bunch of good-for-nothings, how could they stop them? Clang! In the field, Lin Sun took out the broken sword without hesitation. In an instant, the breath around him changed, and his lonely figure was filled with a momentum that could change the color of heaven and earth. His dark eyes were deep and calm, and he quietly operated the extreme inheritance he had just obtained. Buzz! Everyone felt a tingling in their eardrums, and their minds were shaken by the clear sound of the broken sword. Then, in the void, an obscure and complicated formation emerged on the snow-white broken sword. It was dazzling, as if it had completely awakened from silence. The void around it was in disorder and burst into pieces inch by inch, as if it couldn't bear such pressure. This, everyone was shocked. Although they didn't attack, they were keenly aware that Lin Sun's attack was bound to be unusual. Clang! 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 As if sensing danger, the 49 divine generals of fire drew their weapons in unison, as if they were facing a great enemy. Chop! Lin Sun spat out a word gently. As if his words were the law, the broken sword swept out violently. Puff! The first flame general had no time to resist and was cut into two halves. It was as easy as cutting tofu with a knife without any suspense. However, before the crowd could exclaim in shock, the broken blade's momentum did not diminish, and it killed the second divine flame general as well. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth, puff, puff. In the field, dense bursts sounded. In the eyes of the crowd, everywhere the broken sword passed was like a string of firecrackers. The body of each flame general burst into pieces and turned into a rain of light. It was just like the exploding fireworks, magnificent and dazzling. Puff. In the end, this chop was finally blocked by the 49th Flame General. Everyone couldn't help wiping their cold sweat. It was too abnormal. With a single slash, he'd defeated 48 Divine Flame Generals. He was simply ridiculously ferocious, and it caused Chi Yunfeng and the others to be flabbergasted. However, before they could breathe a sigh of relief and wake up from the shock, they heard a puff. After that, they saw that even though the last Divine Flame General had blocked this attack, his body was forcefully split apart and exploded into pieces at this moment. Everyone felt an indescribable chill from the bottom of their hearts, rushing up to the top of their heads along their spines. They were completely stunned. One chop. All 49 Divine Flame Generals were executed. Who could believe it? Before, they didn't take Old Toad's words seriously and thought it was almost impossible for Lin Sun to pass in 49 breath. But now the result came out. There was no need to wait so long. With one chop, the winner was decided. However, the result was so unexpected that the impact was particularly great. Even Old Toad's eyes widened. Could it be done like this? When they looked at Lin Sun again, they all looked as if they had seen a ghost. At this time, Lin Sun's heart was also rolling and he couldn't calm down. The power of this chop was completely beyond his expectation. This was the power of the inheritance of Ji. Chapter 12:29. While everyone was shocked, Lin Sun thought of every detail of the strike just now. This time, he intended to test the might of the extreme inheritance, and that was why he didn't hold back at all and executed all his abilities. For example, the Wrath of Yazi, Fighting Saint Method, and the Unstoppable Law of Water. In retrospect, without the help of the inheritance of Extreme, this strike could kill about 40 immortal flaming generals at most. This also meant that running the inheritance of Extreme could at least increase the power of the broken blade by about 20%. The slightest difference could lead to a great difference. For a strong man like Lin Sun, 20% of the power could completely exert a lethality far beyond imagination in battle. However, the consumption was too great. A single strike consumed 1/3 of Lin Sun's power. This also meant that for now, the inheritance of Extreme could only be used as a trump card. You passed. Soon, those immortal flaming generals recovered. They were formed by the rules. As long as the rules here were not destroyed, they were destined not to be completely killed. Everyone, who was absent-minded, felt their spirits jolt as they woke up. Their gazes simultaneously looked towards the fiercely burning volcano in the distance. There, many wondrous flames of the origin of the way spewed out, taking on different forms. Which kind of original flames you can subdue depends on your ability, the leading immortal flaming general said. Lin Sun nodded and suddenly asked, "How many can I get at most?" The immortal flaming general was stunned at first and then said indifferently, "There is no limit, but you should know that if you are careless when taking the original flames, you will end up with your body and soul burned." The implication was that although there were many flames, it was not so easy to take them, and it was also very dangerous. You'd better act according to your ability. Lin Sun laughed it off. Whoosh! Without hesitation, he flew away. Rumble, the volcano erupted, thousands of flames soared into the sky, the universe was burning, and all things were dying. Only when he got close to the volcano standing between heaven and earth did he realize the horror of this place. The air was full of destructive breath. Whoosh! An indigo Taoist fire, shaped like a spear, swept across the sky and stabbed fiercely at Lin Sun, who was approaching. It was fierce and overbearing. This was essence Tao flame. Coming into contact with even a trace of it would cause one's body to be burned and one's soul to be incinerated. It was the most terrifying type of flame. Lin Sun dodged and continued to move forward. His gaze swept across the sky and saw that at the crater of the volcano, hundreds and thousands of flames of the way were whistling. They were like a group of shooting stars with bright tails, beautiful and colorful. Anyone who saw them would probably wish for nothing more than to absorb them one by one. Lin Sun also thought about it, but he knew very well that every ball of Tao fire contained an extremely terrifying aura of destruction, so he had to act cautiously. Otherwise, it was extremely likely that they would suffer a calamity instead of obtaining the fortuitous opportunity. He circulated the energy in his entire body as he moved forward with the ice WYRM steps, and he'd always been sensing and searching like an experienced and vigilant hunter that was searching for his favorite prey. In the process, the dense Tao fire flowed like a rainbow and attacked Lin Sun from time to time, as if resisting and repelling his approach. This caused the bodies of Ji Xingyao and the others who were paying close attention from afar to tense up, and they held their breaths in concentration. It was too dangerous. Only by subduing the essence Tao fire could a cultivator control it, and before it was subdued, it was a boundlessly terrifying force. According to Lin Sun's combat strength, he should be able to subdue more than one ball of essence Tao fire. But up until now, he hadn't made a move and had been approaching the crater of the volcano. There were hundreds and thousands of essence Tao fire fluttering at the crater of the volcano, and it was no less than a terrifying calamity. Once one was tainted by it, one was bound to suffer an extremely miserable end. What exactly does he want to do? Many people were puzzled. If it was them, they would have made a move a long time ago and subdued a ball of essence Tao fire first. After all, the danger was too great, and the sooner they could obtain benefits, the sooner they could escape. But obviously, Lin Sun had other ideas. Gradually, Lin Sun's figure arrived at the crater of the volcano. At this moment, he'd already utilized the ice WYRM steps to the extreme, and his figure was like an illusory stream of light that flickered and dodged frequently. Because there were too many flames here, and if he was slightly slower, he would be covered. Why is there no innate Tao fire? Lin Sun frowned. He had been searching for a long time, but he hadn't found the Tao fire he wanted at all. Innate Tao fire was the highest grade among the essence Tao fire, and it could only be found by chance. Compared with the ordinary essence Tao fire, innate Tao fire had a unique spirituality, as if it was psychic. It was rumored that some innate Tao fire could even give birth to real Tao patterns. Finally, Lin Sun looked down at the crater of the volcano. It was extremely bright there, and the fire was rolling like a tide. It was extremely frightening, and there were countless Tao fires dancing in it. Soon, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. In his field of vision, there was an extremely magical Tao fire that flashed away just now. It was like a white jade book, and the flames that drifted out evolved into pages of scriptures. The vision was amazing. A ball of Tao fire turned into the shape of a scripture book. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked and almost couldn't believe it. Although he had never seen it before, Lin Sun's intuition told him that it was undoubtedly a ball of innate Tao fire. Whoosh! Before long, another ball of Tao fire appeared, which attracted Lin Sun's attention. It turned into a colorful deer, beautiful and lifelike. It let out a deer cry and walked in the sea of fire, elegant and holy. Unfortunately, it still flashed away. But even so, Lin Sun still couldn't calm down, because it was another kind of innate Tao fire. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun's black eyes flickered, and his expression became uncertain as he looked at the bottom of the volcano. He seemed to be hesitating. Oh no! Brother Lin, are you going to enter the volcano? In the distance, Qi Yunfeng was surprised. Everyone else's hearts were in their throats as well. They felt dizzy. This fiend god Lin was too bold. He ignored so many origin Tao flames and actually planned on exploring the bottom of the volcano. What's wrong with that? There's only one chance like this. If I were him, I would definitely ask for the most satisfactory fortune. Old Toad cried, very dissatisfied with everyone's reaction, as if Lin Sun was going to suffer a disaster. That's not what we mean. We're just too worried about your safety. After all, if anything happens, it will. Inshue didn't say it in the end. But everyone knew what she meant. Indeed, it was too risky. But the development of things obviously didn't go according to their will. Under their gaze, Lin Sun jumped and rushed under the volcano. All of a sudden, Old Toad fell silent, and his heart tightened. He couldn't help but worry about Lin Sun. Rumble! Waves of fire surged, burning endlessly, emitting thunderous rumbles. Hot. Incomparably hot. The moment he rushed into the volcano, Lin Sun felt as if his whole body was about to melt. He used all his cultivation, but his skin inevitably felt a burning pain. But he gritted his teeth and held it in. The more heaven-defying the fortune was, the greater the danger it was accompanied by. Lin Sun knew this better than anyone else. He wasn't acting recklessly. If he really encountered any irresistible danger, he would definitely retreat as soon as possible. Whoosh! A purple Taoist fire in the shape of a painting swept out. When it spread out, it seemed to open up a kingdom of flames. There were mountains, rivers, sun, moon, birds, insects, and insects in it. A painting was like a world of its own, and this was just a ball of Taoist fire derived from it. There was no doubt that this was another congenital Taoist fire. Although Lin Sun was tempted, he didn't dare to act rashly. He exerted his strength to the extreme, and only then did he barely resolve the omnipresent destructive airflow in the air. He continued down. 30 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. Lin Sun felt smoke coming out of his mouth and nose, and his soul seemed to be sinking into a sea of fire. The omnipresent burning power was almost unbearable. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun saw an incredible scene on the lake. In the raging sea of fire, he could vaguely see a cauldron standing there quietly. No matter how the waves of fire hit it, it didn't move at all. And around the cauldron, there was a white jade book, a 5-colored deer, a purple painting, a golden lamp, a black ruler. They were all dancing in the air. These were all derived from the congenital Taoist fire. But at this moment, they were surrounding the cauldron like officials. Each of them was magical, and the scene was extremely shocking. Even Lin Sun's pupils constricted abruptly while tempestuous waves surged in his heart. Merely the quintessence Tao flames had already gone extinct in the ancient Desolation region, and it was a precious treasure that any king realm expert dreamt of. On the other hand, natural Tao flames could be described as something that could only be chanced upon by luck, and it was a true great fortune. Now, there were actually 5 balls of natural Tao flames that had appeared at the same time beneath the volcano. The most inconceivable part was that all of them seemed as if they possessed intelligence, and they were surrounding and protecting a single cauldron. If this scene were to be witnessed by the saints of the present age, then even they would probably be extremely shocked. Lin Sun forcefully maintained his calm, and then he shot his gaze towards the cauldron in the end. When he observed it carefully, a feeling of déjà vu suddenly arose in his mind, and then he instantly recalled that he'd seen this cauldron before he arrived at the stone pagoda. At that time, he'd observed the stone pagoda with his divine sense, yet he'd seen a completely different scene. Everything in the heavens and the earth had been obliterated, and only a single cauldron was blazing violently. The world, the sun, the moon, and the stars were all melted into nothingness. The traces of time and space seemed as if they didn't exist at all. The cauldron was like a constant and eternal existence. Now, Lin Sun finally realized that what he saw wasn't an illusion, and it really existed. This cauldron was hidden beneath the volcano. Moreover, after some observation, Lin soon obtained an answer that caused even his heart to tremble. This cauldron was actually formed from a ball of Tao flames. This seemed to be too unbelievable. They were all Tao flames, yet the other natural Tao flames were like officials that could only guard the surroundings, and this caused this cauldron to seem even more extraordinary and miraculous. Chapter 12:30. The lava was boiling and the waves of fire were sweeping. Lin soon stood in the void, and his figure was incomparably bright. He was trying his best to resist and dissolve the omnipresent destructive breath in the air. Although the situation was extremely dangerous at this time, Lin Sun's black eyes were extremely bright. He had found the Taoist fire he needed. It was that cauldron. It had 3 feet and 2 ears with an ancient aura. Boom! Without hesitation, Lin Sun launched the Bashya prohibition with the true dragon Tao. Roar! A divine beast Bashya came out of the sky, controlling a large net, and imprisoned the cauldron in the air. Unexpectedly, at this time, a black jade ruler swept up and smashed the big net with a snap. The remaining momentum did not decrease, and it smashed toward Lin Sun. This was a congenital Taoist fire, but it evolved into the shape of a black jade ruler, which seemed to be psychic and had amazing lethality. Lin Sun dodged and grabbed with his palm. The surging spiritual power hit the oncoming black jade ruler like a landslide and a tsunami. Surprisingly, such a blow was enough to kill a peerless king, but it was easily broken by the black jade ruler. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. He realized that the power of congenital Taoist fire was too horrible, and ordinary attacks were doomed to be ineffective against it. Suppress! With a loud shout, the divine beast Swanee rushed out with a big seal in its hand and smashed the black jade ruler fiercely. The latter buzzed and shook violently. Although it had not been completely suppressed, Lin Sun was relieved. If this didn't work, he could only use his trump card. Clang! However, with the clear sound of the black jade ruler, from above the volcano, groups of original Taoist fire shaped like knives, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, and forks rushed toward Lin Sun like a torrential tide. That scene was like a large army. Lin Sun's face suddenly became extremely dignified. He didn't expect that the black jade ruler derived from a group of congenital Taoist fire could summon other original Taoist fire to attack. What happened? Far away from the volcano, Si Yunfeng and Ji Xingyao were all surprised. From their eyes, they saw groups of original Taoist fire rushing into the volcano with murderous intent. The scene was horrifying. They must have found a great fortune, Old Toad murmured. Boom! For a moment, Lin Sun was under unprecedented pressure and had to exert all his strength. His figure moved about, surrounded by the symbol of tribulation. He performed the 9 strikes that shook the heavens like an overlord conquering the universe. On the other hand, every single step in his surroundings was filled with destructive and incinerating energy, and they were like comets descending from the sky as they besieged him. Moreover, it was accompanied by the attack of the black jade ruler. This made Lin Sun speechless. He only wanted to subdue the cauldron, but he didn't expect to provoke the counterattack of the black jade ruler. Moreover, the latter had summoned a group of origin Tao flames to besiege him. It was very dangerous. To any supreme monarch, merely subduing a ball of quintessence flames would require them to exert all their strength in order to accomplish it. But now, there were at least hundreds of origin Taoist fires besieging Lin Sun. Moreover, there was a ball of connate Tao flame within it. Even though Lin Sun exerted his combat force to the extreme, he was still injured after only a moment. His skin was burnt one after another. The unspeakable pain made Lin Sun let out a muffled groan and gasp. Only now did he realize the horror of the origin Taoist fire. It was definitely more abnormal than fighting with a group of supreme monarchs. However, even though the situation was unfavorable, how could Lin Sun be willing to leave? Kill. With his black hair flying in the air, he was completely immersed in the extreme state of battle. He exerted the saint method and the wrath of Yazzie. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. He firmly locked his target on the black jade ruler and chased it fiercely. In the process, his clothes were burned, and pieces of charred muscles peeled off from his body, which looked extremely frightening. This was the horror of Tao fire. Before it was subdued, its power was strong enough to burn a king to death and burn both body and soul. However, although the injury was extremely serious, the Black Jade ruler couldn't withstand Lin Sun's full attack in the end. With a bang, the Black Jade ruler exploded and turned into a ball of pure, deep, and frightening flame. The fluctuation it emitted was like the spreading night. Everything in the nearby void that was covered by the black flame was refined and collapsed. But for Lin Sun, this flame had been subdued. With a wave of his hand, the black Tao fire was absorbed and appeared in his palm. On the other hand, the other origin Taoist fires that were besieging Lin Sun suddenly collapsed like an army that had lost its commander. At the same time, a wave of enlightenment emerged in Lin Sun's heart. The eternal silence Taoist fire was born from the congenital darkness source. The black flame illuminated Lin Sun's expression, and then he gritted his teeth and gasped without end. His whole body felt like it was being torn apart. He was covered in injuries in the previous battle. At this moment, he was like a piece of charcoal riddled with holes, and countless muscles and bones had been burned. His injuries could be said to be extremely serious, and this was the price to pay for subduing the congenital Taoist fire. If it was any other supreme monarch, they probably wouldn't have the life to fight for such an opportunity. Without thinking too much, Lin Sun took out a large handful of king medicines and began to consume and refine them as if they were free. At the same time, he exerted the power of the immortality Tao. In next to no time, the injuries all over his body were recovering at an astonishing speed. During this entire process, the Taoist fire still remained motionless, and there were 4 congenital Taoist fires protecting it nearby. They were a 5-colored deer, a white jade book, a violet painting, and a golden lamp. Based on this situation, Lin Sun realized that if he wanted to obtain the Taoist fire today, then he would probably have to deal with these 4 congenital Taoist fires first. After a short moment, Lin Sun consumed the energy of an entire 7 king medicines, and with the assistance of the immortality Tao insight, he finally completely recovered from his injuries and strength. This was undoubtedly a huge price. After all, king medicines weren't cabbages, and they could be considered as luxuries for any king realm expert. However, he'd gained a lot this time. At the very least, he'd obtained a congenital Taoist fire. Huff after letting out a long breath of foul air, Lin Sun once more looked at the Taoist fire, and he suppressed it without the slightest hesitation. If he couldn't obtain this Taoist fire today, then he would absolutely regret it for the rest of his life. As Lin Sun expected, this time, another congenital Taoist fire launched a counterattack, like a loyal guard. It was the golden lamp, which was floating in the void, and the wick was shining brightly. The flames it emitted were as brilliant as gold, magnificent and dazzling, with a kind of majestic and magnificent atmosphere. Unsurprisingly, after being summoned by the golden lamp, another group of congenital Taoist fires turned into an army and attacked Lin Sun. They turned into thunder and lightning, hurricanes, clouds, and flowing lights. Like natural disasters, they fell on Lin Sun all at once. This battle was more difficult. At the end of the battle, Lin Sun's body had been burned, and his left arm and right leg had been burned off, but the result was not bad. The Taoist fire of the golden lamp was subdued. It was called Golden Blaze Taoist Fire, and it was born in the congenital metal source. This time, Lin Sun consumed 9 king medicines in order to recover his injuries. One of them was a rare treasure, which had the magical effect of bringing the dead back to life. Taking it was no less than making the body undergo nirvana and glowing with a new vitality. What made Lin soon feel strange was that his physical strength had been transformed again and again in the process of destruction and recovery. The rarest thing was that even his control of the immortality Tao had been greatly improved. A danger, a nirvana, a chance. The ancient sages are right. Misfortune and fortune depend on each other, Lin soon murmured in his heart. Although the battle was extremely difficult, miserable, painful, and he was always under a fatal test of life and death. But at the same time, after this tempering, he not only obtained the chance, but also obtained great benefits for himself. Next, Lin soon successively subdued a purple painting scroll and a multicolored deer in the same way. These two congenital Taoist fires were named Zihuang and Wuji respectively. Each of them had its own characteristics, and their magical effects could be described as incredible. Similarly, during this entire process, his body was destroyed and reborn over and over again, and it was like he was undergoing rebirth after rebirth. Although his cultivation didn't improve, his body was baptized and sublimated again and again. Originally, Lin Sun was not a body practitioner. His path included the methods of soul cultivation and qi refining, but he lacked the method of body refining. But now, his body was like a beautiful jade that had been washed clean. If he wanted to pursue the way of body refining in the future, he could definitely get twice the result with half the effort. Even ordinary treasures couldn't hurt Lin Sun just because of the toughness of his body. The only thing that made Lin Sun's heart ache was that he had consumed nearly 40 king medicines so far, many of which were rare treasures. If he hadn't looted a lot of enemies' wealth during this period of time, this kind of consumption was enough to make him unable to support it. Among the 4 elements of cultivation, wealth, companions, dharma, and land, wealth ranked first, which showed the importance of wealth to cultivation. Without delay, Lin soon gritted his teeth and fixed his eyes on the white jade book. He could continue to collect king medicines in the future, but there was only one chance to subdue Taoist fire. To Lin Sun's surprise, this white jade book was extremely terrifying, far more powerful than the 4 congenital Taoist fires he had subdued before. At the end of the battle, his body was on the verge of collapse, and even his soul was affected. He almost died. But in the end, Lin Sun still won. At the last moment, he attacked with the instant of spring and autumn and completely subdued the white jade book with one finger pointing at the universe. Then, he knew that this congenital Taoist fire was called dustless, and it was born in the origin of the congenital clear qi. The clear qi was heaven. This dustless Taoist fire could undoubtedly rank first among the 5 congenital Taoist fires that had been subdued. If he hadn't been eyeing that Taoist fire for a long time, Lin Sun would definitely take it for his own use. P.S. Today is Chinese Valentine's Day. On this special day belonging to lovers, I, the goldfish, am struggling to write, so, add more tomorrow. Chapter 12:31. Although he succeeded in subduing the dustless Taoist fire, Lin Sun paid a heavy price. It took him 16 king herbs to restore his body and rejuvenate it. In fact, in the process of subduing the 5 Taoist fires, Lin Sun's body had undergone 5 nirvana invisibly. It was like a piece of iron that had been broken 5 times and then reshaped 5 times. Although dozens of king herbs had been consumed, the essence of these king herbs made Lin Sun's reconstructed body extremely powerful. Just like at this moment, his body was crystal clear and full of treasure light. His muscles, bones, and skin seemed to be made of divine gold, revealing abundant vitality. Even his hair was shining with spiritual light. If it was cut off, it could be used as a precious spiritual material for forging. Undoubtedly, this was an unexpected gain. Although Lin Sun had not set foot on the road of body refining, he had laid a solid foundation for his physique. Feeling that his physical strength had recovered to the peak, Lin Sun looked at the furnace fire that stood in the sea of fire like an eternal immortal. The 5 Taoist fires had been subdued. Now, Lin Sun only needed to subdue the most desirable great fortune. However, before Lin Sun could take action, a flame immortal general suddenly appeared and cupped his hands. "Child, please stop." The voice was still indifferent and empty, but it was polite, which was undoubtedly a kind of recognition for Lin Sun. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "Are you going to stop me?" The flame immortal general shook his head. "If child takes action, it will inevitably cause unpredictable disasters and destroy the sealed opportunity completely." Lin Sun said thoughtfully, "You mean, if I take action against the furnace fire, everything here will disappear?" The flame immortal general nodded and immediately said, "However, if child wants to take away the Taoist fire, there is a way." "What do you mean?" Lin Sun's black eyes brightened. "It was better not to take action. This Taoist fire was born in the origin of chaos and later sealed here. If child can make it surrender, it will follow you and serve you as its master." The flame immortal general said. Lin Sun looked at the furnace fire and frowned. "If I don't take action, how can I make it surrender?" The flame immortal general said, "It's enough to get its recognition. As for how to obtain the recognition, it didn't say." Lin Sun was lost in thought. Finally, he decided to give it a try. Outside the volcano, Si Yunfeng, Ji Xingyao and Old Toad were all anxiously waiting. A while ago, thunderous booms could be heard from within the volcano from time to time, and groups of origin Dao flames rushed into it. These scenes made them shudder with fear, and they were afraid that Lin Sun would be in trouble. One could imagine the terrifying battle that was happening beneath the volcano. It was unknown if Fiend Celestial Lin could withstand it. Suddenly, Ji Xingyao noticed that the erupting volcano had become strangely silent, and there wasn't the slightest sound. After that, everyone noticed that even the thousands of strands of quintessence flames that had erupted from the volcano had vanished, and it had fallen into silence. Moreover, all of them acutely noticed that the scorching aura of destruction that filled this expanse of the heavens and the earth was actually swiftly retreating. Although it was still fiery hot, it was no longer as oppressive as before. What happened? Everyone was surprised and bewildered. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's lone and tall figure appeared at the crater of the volcano in their field of vision. Dressed in a moon-white robe, his black hair fluttering in the wind, his whole body bathed in illusory Taoist light. From a distance, he looked like a drifting immortal. He was out. The crowd was restless, and their hearts that were hanging in suspense were all put back into their stomachs. Lin Sun strode over. As he left, the incomparably fiery volcano gradually became cold and gloomy, and was on the verge of being extinguished. This was shocking. How could this be? "Lin Sun, have you obtained any great fortune?" Old Toad couldn't help asking. Lin Sun nodded, and then said, "Let's get out of here first." Everyone looked at each other, suppressed all kinds of doubts in their hearts, and followed Lin Sun back the way they had come. Boom! Behind them, the volcano that had buried an unknown amount of quintessence flames sank with a loud bang, disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This caused everyone to be shocked once again. With a strange look on their faces, they all knew that something shocking must have happened under the volcano that caused all this to happen. This was surely related to Lin Sun. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief at the same time when they left along the cave and returned to the stone pagoda. However, Lin Sun still didn't have any intention to speak. His brows were knit tightly together as he hurried back the way he came at an even faster speed. Even though everyone had many questions in their hearts, they restrained themselves in the end. On the way, Lin Sun was slightly absent-minded. Earlier, he'd tried to communicate with the furnace Dao flame with his divine sense, yet he noticed to his shock that there was actually a shapeless restrictive force around the furnace Dao flame. It was precisely this shapeless restrictive force that sealed the furnace Dao flame, causing it to be unable to move and remain silent beneath the volcano. However, this restrictive force didn't harm Lin Sun, and it revealed a row of ancient bird seal Dao markings instead. If you want to obtain this flame, then you must be tainted with karma. If you want to resolve karma, then you must comprehend the profundities of nature. No matter who you are, may I ask if you're willing to bring this flame to the ruins of profundities? The ruins of profundities was one of the 4 great ancient ruins of Tao, and it was said to be in the deepest depths of the starry sky. Lin Sun wasn't unfamiliar to the rumors about this place, and it was even to the extent that he possessed some treasures that were slightly related to the ruins of profundities. However, he'd never imagined that when he gathered the furnace Tao flame, he would actually inadvertently involve the ruins of profundities once more. Lin Sun understood that this flame carried karma. If he wanted to obtain it, then he was bound to bear the karma that came with it, and this karma was related to the ruins of profundities. However, he'd never thought of searching for this place that was almost like a legend. But in the end, Lin Sun agreed. Because this furnace Tao flame was too important to him. The reason he'd risked his life to kill his way to the bottom of the volcano this time was none other than for the sake of finding a Tao flame that satisfied him so that he could temper and nurture his imperial Tao armament. After that, the restriction was removed, and the furnace Tao flame was gathered by Lin Sun in an extremely smooth manner without any mishaps occurring along the way. It seemed to be very smooth, yet Lin Sun knew that he'd already been tainted with the karma of this furnace Tao flame. As for how to resolve it, that was a matter for the future, and Lin Sun didn't have to worry about an illusory karma. What really moved Lin Sun was that this fire was called Wonder of All. This undoubtedly proved that this flame was definitely closely related to the ruins of profundity of legend. At this time, the wonderful Tao fire was docilely floating above the Tao seed in Lin Sun's body. Around the myriad profound Tao flames, the eternal silence Tao flame, that had transformed into a black jade ruler, the dustless Tao flame, that had transformed into a white jade book, the 5 elements Tao flame, that had transformed into a 5-colored deer, the golden blaze Tao flame, that had transformed into a golden lamp, and the purple radiance Tao flame, that had transformed into a purple painting. The 5 congenital flames of Wei had already been subdued by Lin Sun, but at this time, in front of the wonderful flames of Wei, they were still like subjects, surrounded and guarded. From this, it could be seen how shocking the myriad Tao flames were. Boom! As soon as Lin Sun and the others walked out of the tomb world, the whole hill-like ancient tomb collapsed. Amidst the smoke and dust, it disappeared into the ground. When Lin and others searched carefully, they couldn't find any trace at all. It was as if the tomb had vanished into thin air. But they were clearly aware that everything they'd experienced earlier was real. "Brother Lin, what did you experience at the bottom of the volcano?" Ji Xingyao couldn't help but ask. The others looked at Lin Sun with curiosity. Lin Sun smiled and said, "I saw a very extraordinary congenital Tao flame. In order to subdue it, I had no choice but to fight with all my strength. Fortunately, I was lucky enough to succeed." He paused for a moment and continued. "However, it was also because of this battle that the volcano was affected, causing it to fall into silence. I wonder when it will appear again and where it will appear next." Even though his words were half true and half false, everyone had no intention of getting to the bottom of it. After all, this was Lin Sun's private matter in the end. If he wasn't willing to tell them, then it would be useless no matter how much they asked. As he spoke, Lin Sun flipped his hand, and 2 balls of quintessence Tao flames appeared, instantly drawing everyone's attention towards him. After that, to everyone's shock, Lin Sun actually gave these 2 balls of quintessence Tao flames to Yin Shui and Zhang Luxiu. This was a fortune that could only be encountered by chance, and it had long been extinct in the outside world. Its value was immeasurable, and it couldn't be measured by value at all. But now Lin Sun casually gave them 2 balls of quintessence Tao flames. For a moment, Zhang Luxiu and Yin Shui couldn't help but be stunned. They were so surprised that their minds were a little muddled. Since it's a gift from Brother Lin, why don't you quickly accept it? There won't be another chance like this if you miss this opportunity, Si Yunfeng said with a smile. His heart was also quite complicated. There was shock and admiration in his heart. If it were him, he probably wouldn't have such great courage. Thank you, Brother Lin. We won't dare to forget such a great kindness. Yin Shui and Jean Lucio both took a deep breath and expressed their gratitude solemnly. Lin Sun smiled. This was only the second ball of quintessence Dao flames that he had casually obtained on his way back. He still had more than 10 balls of quintessence Dao flames in his hand. If it weren't for the lack of time at that time, he would have obtained more. Others could also guess this, but no one said anything. This was Lin Sun's fortune, and no one could dispute it. When I have the chance, I'll give you a ball of congenital Taoist fire. At the same time, Lin Sun was transmitting his voice to Old Toad. He had a ball of golden scorching Taoist fire in his hand, which was extremely suitable for Old Toad. Old Toad's expression didn't change, but he was ecstatic inside. He transmitted his voice. I knew it. You must have gotten a lot of benefits. Chapter 1232. Obviously, Old Toad was still thinking about the congenital Taoism fire that Wang Xuanyu had taken away. Lin Sun patted him on the shoulder and said, I'll help you vent your anger. Wang Xuanyu was the leader of the younger generation of Tai Taoism sect and had been famous in the ancient Desolation realm many years ago. He was comparable to Mi Hengzhen and Yi Mo. But Lin Sun wasn't afraid of him. But where was Wang Xuanyu now? Brother Lin, what are you talking about? Mo Tianhe asked. We're talking about Wang Xuanyu. Speaking of this, Lin Sun thought of something and said, Where do you think this guy might be now? Ji Xingyao, Mo Tianhe, and Si Yunfeng were all shocked. They realized that Demon Lin was not going to let Wang Xuanyu take away Old Toad's fortune. Since he appeared in the bloodland of Styx River like us, his ultimate goal must be the same as ours, the Cave of God underworld. Ji Xingyao said after thinking for a while. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes and he said, In that case, let's set off immediately. Seeing this, the others didn't persuade him. With Demon Lin's current combat power, he was indeed not afraid to be enemies with the future leader of Tai Taoism sect. Under Ji Xingyao's guidance, they continued to move forward. This world was calm, desolate, and desolate. Along the way, they didn't encounter any danger, but the aura between heaven and earth was getting gloomier and more gloomy. It was like walking in a lifeless land of the netherworld. But soon, Lin Sun and others noticed that many dazzling escape lights were flying in the same direction. He was a cultivator just like them. It seems that there are many forces entering the forbidden land of Styx River this time. Si Yunfeng frowned with a cold look. On the way before, they met Wu Lingdo, the 13th Prince of Golden Crow, and then learned that Wang Xuanyu of Tai Taoism sect had appeared. Now, they met many cultivators one after another. Everyone knew that there were definitely many forces coming to explore the opportunity this time. Sure enough, in the following time, they met some cultivators one after another, all in group. Among them, there were many extremely powerful figures. Moreover, Qi Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe, and the others were all from great forces, so they recognized some ruthless characters who were on par with them. The situation is slightly troublesome. More and more powers have set their sights on the Nether God Cave this time, and it's obvious that the competition there is bound to be extremely brutal. Mo Tianhe looked solemn. What's there to be afraid of? Our strength is more than enough to deal with everything. Moreover, we have Brother Lin with us this time. It should be others who are afraid of us. Si Yunfeng smiled, appearing very confident. Of course, he also complimented Lin Sun unobtrusively. They were not stupid. They all knew that Qi Yunfeng hoped that Lin Sun could help him if he encountered a difficult enemy. Lin Sun smiled and said nothing. After the time for an incense stick to burn, a blood-colored mountain appeared on the horizon in the distance. It lay across 500 kilometers, was powerful and enormous, and was like the body of a blood-colored dragon that lay coiled in the heavens and the earth. The underworld god cave is right there. Ji Xingyao's clear eyes lit up as she looked into the distance. Everyone's spirits were lifted. The greatest heaven-defying fortune in the forbidden area of the Styx was suspected to be hidden in the underworld god cave. This fortune had been sealed for tens of thousands of years, but it would definitely be unsealed and revealed in this great era. As soon as Lin Sun and the others approached, they saw that there was an enormous crack in the center of the blood-colored mountain, and the crack was covered with a thick layer of bloody light. It was like a blood-colored wall that blocked the crack. At this moment, many figures were taking action. Charge! A loud roar resounded like thunder, and a figure that was tall and sturdy like a mountain flashed out and rushed towards the crack in the mountain. The blood-colored wall emitted a gorgeous light, and then strange and distorted blood-colored symbols drifted out and enveloped the tall and sturdy figure. In an instant, the tall and sturdy figure was bathed in bloody light, and then he rushed into the crack and disappeared. Let's go! The seal here has been lifted a long time ago, and this heaven-defying fortune is within our reach. Hurry up! The other cultivators acted one after another when they saw this. For a time, the escape lights were like rain, and they all rushed into the crack in the blood-colored mountain. There was no doubt that the underworld god cave was inside the crack. Qi Yunfeng and the others were all nervous. They didn't expect that they would be a step too late to enter the underworld god cave. This was equivalent to losing the first opportunity. It's that guy. Suddenly, Old Toad shouted, looking excited, and pointed to the distance. Lin Sun suddenly looked up and saw a young man in a black Taoist robe, stepping on a black rainbow, rushing into the sky. When Old Toad cried out, the young man suddenly turned his head. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun saw the man's appearance clearly. He had red lips, white teeth, sword-like eyebrows, and starry eyes. His figure was as thin as a pine tree, and he was full of divine spirit. A pair of mysterious symbols emerged in his eyes, one black and one white, like a yin and yang fish, flowing with frightening divine light. The vision was amazing. Tai treasure pupil. This must be Wang Xuanyu without a doubt. When he saw Old Toad, Wang Xuanyu was slightly stunned, and then immediately smiled and cupped his hands, looking very polite. However, he didn't stop and suddenly disappeared. Old Toad was so angry that he almost jumped up. This Wang Xuanyu not only robbed him of his good fortune, but also greeted him with such a smile. His attitude was too arrogant. He is Wang Xuanyu? It looks like he's quite a gentleman. Mo Tianhe was surprised. Old Toad scolded, "What do you know? This guy looks like a dog, but his means are extremely despicable." Lin Sun didn't agree with this. Opportunities could be competed for. On this point, Wang Xuanyu's approach was understandable. The only mistake was that Wang Xuanyu chose the wrong target. Old Toad was Lin Sun's brother. Since Wang Xuanyu dared to do this, Lin Sun dared to give him a taste of his own medicine. The Supreme Treasure Pupil is a first-rate, extraordinary talent. In the ancient times, it was reputed to be the sign of a saint. This also means that as long as this person doesn't neglect his cultivation, he will be able to step onto the saint path sooner or later. Qi Yunfeng obviously knew more and said in a low voice, "Now, he has obviously set foot on the Extinction King realm. If you fight with him, you should be especially careful of his pupil technique. I heard that once the Tai treasure pupil is activated, it can shoot out the Tai light that can cut yin and yang and distinguish between clear and turbid. It's extremely abnormal." Ji Xingyao also nodded. "When I came out of my closed-door training, I went to the Tai Taoism sect to challenge Wang Xuanyu. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to meet him. However, I heard that Wang Xuanyu is regarded as a one-in-a-million peerless figure in the world. He is born with great luck, like the Son of God. His combat power is so strong that it can't be underestimated. Lin Sun nodded with a calm look. He had long known that Wang Xuanyu was extremely powerful, but this couldn't affect his will to deal with this person. Without delay, Lin Sun and the others also took action. Did I see it wrong? Demon Lin is with the descendants of Xianming Palace and Xianwen Sword House? The situation is not good. Demon Lin is also involved. This cave of God underworld is destined to set off a bloody storm. Many cultivators noticed the traces of Lin Sun and the others, and all of them were shocked. Brother Lin, take us with you. We are willing to follow you and obey your orders. There were also some quick-witted people who shouted. They all knew that Demon Lin's combat power was extremely strong, and now he was accompanied by the experts of Xianming Palace and Xianming Sword House. If they could follow them, they would most likely be able to get some good fortune. Lin Sun and the others ignored them. Let's go. Follow them. Some people gritted their teeth and rushed up, thinking that even if Lin Sun and the others didn't agree to follow them, they would definitely not make things difficult for them. Even if they could follow Lin Sun and the others, they could avoid a lot of danger. After rushing through the bloody wall and entering the huge mountain crack, the scene suddenly changed. This was an extremely huge cave tunnel, winding and extremely deep, filled with wisps of bloody light. It seemed very mysterious, and no one knew where it led. Not long after Lin Sun and the others moved forward, there suddenly appeared a dense crossroad, like a beehive of holes, leading to different directions. Which one should they take? Everyone was a little hesitant. Ji Xingyao and Si Yunfeng took out the incomplete map and looked at it carefully, but found nothing. It made sense. The divine underworld cave had been sealed for thousands of years, and no one had ever entered it. The lifting of the seal this time was strange to all the strong people who entered it. Why don't we act separately? Si Yunfeng pondered. In this way, the chance of getting a chance will be greater. It was obvious that if they acted together, even if they encountered a chance, they were doomed to be unable to meet the needs of each of them. Even if they got a chance, who could guarantee that it would be fair when it was divided? In particular, Lin Sun was already the leader of their group, and he was destined to occupy an advantage when seizing the chance. The subtle difference could be understood as long as one was attentive. The others looked at each other and finally looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun said with a smile, "That's good. In my opinion, choosing different paths doesn't necessarily mean that there is no chance of meeting each other. It's just that the path we choose now is different." At this point, Si Yunfeng, Yin Shui, Zhan Luxiu and the others chose a path and left first. Taoist Lin seems to be a little afraid of you. Ji Xingyao transmitted her voice to Lin Sun thoughtfully. It's normal. Everyone is here for the chance. It's good to act separately and compete for the chance by our own ability. Lin Sun transmitted his voice with a smile. Seeing that Lin Sun didn't care, Ji Xingyao didn't bother to pay attention to him anymore. By the way, would you like to act with us? Lin Sun asked. Ji Xingyao thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Mo Tianhe wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. But in the end, he didn't refuse. As for what he was thinking, Lin Sun was in no mood to guess. After making up his mind, Lin Sun looked at a path and took the lead in it without hesitation. Seeing this, others suddenly realized that it seemed that, from the beginning, Lin Sun had already made it clear that he would take this path. P.S. I apologize to you. I was going to add more chapters today, but I received a call at the last minute. I had to go to the downtown railway station dozens of miles away to pick up my mother, who had just returned from a trip. Chapter 1233. Indeed, Lin Sun had already determined which path to take. As soon as he entered the underworld cave, a wisp of obscure fluctuation emerged from the copper ring he wore on his finger. It seemed to be called by something. The copper ring was silently entwined in Lin Sun's hair when they crossed the Bloody Mist River. It was extremely mysterious. At that time, Lin Sun had speculated that this seemingly ordinary thing was destined to be extremely extraordinary, and it might have something to do with the headless corpse on the blood-stained dress. Now, the copper ring began to move, which undoubtedly proved that his speculation was correct. Especially after arriving at the many forks in the cave, it was the obscure fluctuation produced by the copper ring that made Lin Sun make a decision at once. However, he didn't tell others, because he was still not sure where the guidance of the copper ring would lead them, and whether it would be a blessing or a curse. After Lin Sun and the others entered this path, a blood-red rainbow floated in the void, silently and vaguely blocking the entrance of the cave. A group of 7 or 8 strong people rushed over, obviously intending to follow Lin Sun and the others. But as soon as they rushed in, they were swept by the blood-red rainbow. Their bodies seemed to be cut by a sharp blade, and blood burst out. 3 of them died on the spot. The others were so scared that they gasped and turned back with pale faces. It was too weird. Seeing that Lin Sun and the others were safe, they also wanted to follow them, thinking that they could avoid many dangers in this way. But it never occurred to them that the path Lin Sun and the others took was not something they could take at all. Lin Sun and the others were unaware of all this. The cave was deep and quiet, and no one knew where it led to. Boom! Suddenly, a blood-red flame emerged in the void in front of them, blooming with demonic luster, and blocked their way. Lin Sun and the others' pupils shrank. The flame seemed to be only the size of a fist, but it emitted an extremely terrible and horrifying aura, like a mass of burning divine blood. Sinful netherworld fire. The old toad's face was ugly, and there was a deep fear in its voice. Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe's faces changed. It was said that this fire was born in the mysterious Styx River, and it contained monstrous sinful power. If a divine being came into contact with it, they would also turn into a pile of bones. Of course, this was only a legend. Since ancient times, very few people had actually seen it. Even the records in the ancient books were merely rumors. Is it true? Ji Xingyao could not help but ask. There's no mistake. The energy of sin within this flame is boundlessly terrifying. It's absolutely this flame without a doubt. The old toad's golden pupils were brilliant and flickered with a terrifying sheen. All of a sudden, their hearts became heavy. With this fire blocking the path, it meant that the path was blocked. Moreover, they indeed did not have the confidence to disperse this extremely terrifying legendary flame. But Lin Sun waved his sleeves. The sinful nether flame seemed as if it had suffered a shock, and it vanished with a swish. Old Toad and the others widened their eyes and almost bit their tongues. When they were still worried and afraid, how could they have thought that Lin Sun could disperse the fire with a casual wave of his sleeve? Liar! Ji Xingyao blushed in embarrassment. He was actually frightened just now. That was definitely not the legendary sinful netherworld fire. Taoist Jean, you're being a bit alarmist. Mo Tianhe also felt a little embarrassed. He had also been frightened just now. The old toad looked embarrassed, but he was still muttering in his heart. As a direct descendant of the 3-legged golden toad, he would never make a mistake. That was clearly the sinful netherworld fire just now. But he had no way to explain it. Could he say that the sinful netherworld fire, which could turn a divine being into a pile of bones, was a coward? The old toad looked at Lin Sun and said, "Do you want to explain?" Lin Sun was in no mood to talk nonsense. He said, "The danger has already been resolved. What's the point of explaining so much? Let's go." He took the lead and walked forward. In fact, he had only been probing to see if the aura of the copper ring could intimidate the sinful netherfire. He hadn't expected the effect to be unexpectedly good. This also made Lin Sun even more certain that the copper ring had something to do with the underworld cave. Before long, a cold flower made of white bones blocked the path. It was more than 2 feet tall, and the flower blooming on its branches and leaves was actually a dark blue skull. "Oh no, it's the underworld flower!" The old toad cried out in shock. It was said that this flower had the power to draw souls. Once you were targeted by it, your soul would be drawn out and you would be completely immersed in it. Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe also trembled in their hearts, and their faces changed slightly. Obviously, they had also heard of the horror of this flower. But Lin Sun didn't stop. The most incredible thing was that as he approached, the underworld flower was so scared that it ran away and disappeared in a flash. This was also called the underworld flower? Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe looked at the old toad, who looked embarrassed, as if 10,000 wild horses were galloping in his heart. In the following journey, they encountered all sorts of strange and incomparably terrifying things. Like turbid spring water of the netherworld, deceased soul grass exuding a strong aura of death, but without exception, they were all false alarms. These horrible things, which only existed in legends, all retreated before Lin Sun got close to them. Now, even Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe felt that something was wrong and realized that all this was very likely to have something to do with Lin Sun. But Lin Sun didn't want to say more, so they didn't ask. As strong people at their level, who didn't have some secrets, it didn't take long for the area to open up. A bizarre stone forest appeared in front of them, and stone statues stood towering within it. Some were more than 30 meters high on two snakes, holding bloody chains in their hand. Some were as short as dwarfs, with a pitch-black bull's head and a pen in their hands. Some had green faces and sharp fangs, with skulls hanging from their ears and 6 claws. And some, all of them, had strange and horrifying appearances, and they were like ferocious gods and devils that emanated a ghastly aura that assaulted the face. Arriving here was like coming to the legendary hell. Boom! Suddenly, one of the stone statues came to life and rushed out. It was the creature on 2 snakes, holding bloody chains in its hands, with a monstrous aura. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel awestruck. Just as he was about to take action, he saw the creature's body suddenly burst into pieces, turning into a black light rain and disappearing. When he looked again, the stone statue was still there, standing there quietly, as if what happened just now was just an illusion. But this made Old Toad and the others break out in a cold sweat. It was absolutely not an illusion just now. The horrible atmosphere that came to their faces still lingered in their hearts. If they asked themselves honestly, if they had fought directly just now, they all doubted whether they could defeat the stone statue. And Lin Sun rubbed the bronze ring between his fingers, unable to calm down. Along the way they encountered many extremely terrible things, no less than a killing disaster, but in the end it was just a false alarm. They didn't even make a move. But Lin Sun knew clearly that without the bronze ring in his hand, they were doomed to not arrive here so easily. Because whether it was the sinful hellfire, bone and dark flower they had encountered before, or the attack just now, they were all dispelled by the aura of this bronze ring. In short, it was this bronze ring that saved them from danger all the way without suffering any attack. Let's go on. Lin Sun clearly felt that when they arrived at this strange stone forest, the aura emitted by the bronze ring became stronger, as if it was summoned by some kind of call. Seeing this, Old Toad and the others also calmed down and carefully followed Lin Sun. Along the way, the ferocious stone statues all transformed into figures and attacked them. But without exception, they all turned into light rain halfway, unable to get close to Lin Sun and the others. After a full 15 minutes, Lin Sun and the others passed through this strange stone forest. It was also at this moment that a refreshing fragrance of medicine drifted from afar. It smells so good. Old Toad's nose twitched, feeling an indescribable intoxication in his soul. Is it another illusory thing that doesn't exist? Ji Xingyao frowned. Not this time. It was Lin Sun who spoke. In front of them was a lake, in which the blood-colored waves were tumbling and surging, making a sound of crashing. Vaguely, in the blood-colored lake, there was a white bone lotus, whose branches and leaves were made of white bones. On the top of it hung a gorgeous and resplendent lotus pod that flowed with flowing light, and strands of light that were like rainbows rained down from it. Even at a very far distance, a faint but clear fragrance of medicine could be smelled. Magic medicine! Everyone's eyes lit up at once. It deserves to be called the Cave of God Underworld. In such a mysterious place there is such a magic medicine. Lin Sun sighed. However, when he started to pick it, he encountered great trouble. The blood-colored lake was tumbling, and out rushed white bone dragons to besiege them. This time, the bronze ring didn't play any role. However, this was not a problem for Lin Sun and the others. In just a moment, Lin Sun took advantage of the opportunity to pick the brilliant lotus head. Crack! Lin Sun opened the lotus head, and suddenly a magnificent rain of light fell out. Red, gold, black, cyan. Looking carefully, there were 5 colorful lotus seeds, more translucent than diamonds, in the lotus head, each of which was the size of a pigeon's egg. This was a magic medicine, and there were 5 of them. All of a sudden, Lin Sun and the others' eyes were firmly attracted, and their hearts were shocked. Such a magic medicine was extremely rare. I remember, the lotus gives birth to 5 seeds, and the great way of 5 elements is wonderful. This is a 5-element lotus. The old toad recognized it and gasped. Magic medicines were also divided into 3 grades, namely the top, middle and lower grades, and the rarer supreme grade. And this 5-element lotus in front of them had the appearance of a top grade. Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe also nodded. 5-element lotus was an extremely famous magic medicine as early as ancient times. Although they had never seen it, how could they not have heard of it? Lin Sun couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart, thinking of the 3 yin and yang lotus he had obtained on the Flying Star Mountain. P.S. Because of the mundane affairs, the update is a little late, but don't worry. Goldfish promised to update 3 times today. Even if I stay up until midnight, the update will come out. Chapter 1234. The Yin-Yang Divine Lotus wasn't just a divine medicine, it also contained the energies of 2 grand Daos, Yin and Yang. Moreover, the fusion of Yin and Yang could form the great Tao of Taiji. This was one of the 99 heavenly great Daos. This obviously showed how precious the Yin-Yang Divine Lotus was. On the other hand, the 5-element divine lotus before them was even more shocking. Each of its 5 lotus seeds contained a type of the grand Tao of the 5 elements, and it was bound to not be something that other divine medicines could compare to. Out of the 5 lotus seeds, I'll get 2. You guys can split the remaining 3. How about it? Lin Sun didn't stand on ceremony. As the leader, this was the treatment he deserved. Ji Xingyao said, "We didn't do much, so we didn't have a chance." Before she finished, Lin interrupted her with a smile and asked her not to refuse again. Immediately, Lin Sun left a gold lotus seed and a wood lotus seed. He had already grasped the 2 grand Daos of water and fire, so it would be a waste to keep the water element lotus seed and fire element lotus seed in his possession. Old Toad chose an earth element lotus seed. Ji Xingyao and Mo Tianhe got water lotus seeds and fire lotus seeds respectively. No matter who it was, they would be very satisfied with this distribution. Haha, I wonder how Si Yunfeng and the others are doing now? Old Toad suddenly laughed. He was somewhat dissatisfied with Si Yunfeng's decision to split up. They had agreed to share weal and woe together, but they had chosen to act separately. Originally, this wasn't a big deal, but in Old Toad's view, Qi Yunfeng probably didn't want to be enemies with Tai Dao Sec's Wang Xuanyu. Otherwise, if they moved together, it would definitely be safer, and they would have a greater chance of seizing opportunities and fortunes. Why would they move separately? Just because they were worried that the fortuitous opportunities would not be distributed fairly? Old Toad didn't believe that. Fellow Taoist Yun must have other plans. Mo Tianhe explained. His relationship with Qi Yunfeng wasn't shallow, so he could naturally hear the hint of dissatisfaction in Old Toad's voice. The Old Toad sneered. Don't forget, if it weren't for Lin Sun, how could Yin Shui and Jean Lucio, who followed Qi Yunfeng, have obtained the origin of Dao fire? Mo Tianhe was stunned, and he couldn't help but sigh lightly. This does seem to be slightly improper indeed, but what can I say? Alright, we're all in the same group after all. We're just splitting up. There's no need to be so calculative, Lin Sun said casually. Rumble. At this time, the blood lake surged, and a pitch-black boat appeared, drifting alone in it. There was also a boatman sitting on it. However, when Lin Sun and the others saw the boatman, they all shuddered with fear. This was because it was a skeleton wearing black clothes and a bamboo hat, with green flames burning in its eye sockets. A boat and a skeleton appeared on the Scarlet Lake. It was a very strange scene. Since there is a boat, it is naturally used to ferry people. Ji Xingyao pondered. But Old Toad had already said loudly, "Ferryman, how should I sit on your boat?" A divine medicine. Out of everyone's expectations, the skeleton boatman actually opened his mouth, his voice hollow and ethereal. How arrogant. Why don't you go rob someone? Old Toad said unhappily. The skeleton boatman said faintly, "There are countless corpses buried under this lake. Without my guidance, even if one flew into the sky or burrowed into the earth, they would not be able to reach the other side." After thinking for a while, Lin Sun flicked his finger, and the wood element lotus seed flew to the black ship with a whoosh. It seemed to be handing over the divine medicine, but it was also a kind of extremely fierce attack. Crack! But the skeleton boatman didn't move. He just opened his mouth, swallowed the lotus seed, and chewed it with his snow-white teeth. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly shrank. Even a peerless king might not be able to resist this blow, but the skeleton boatman seemed to be unaware of it, and didn't receive any impact at all. The skeleton boatman got up, hung a dim yellow oil lamp on the bow, and then picked up a white bone oar, looking at Lin Sun and the others. It was obvious that he was inviting them to get on the boat. Lin Sun took a deep breath, glanced at the others, and then led them to fly to the pitch-black boat in the distance. Boom! Suddenly, a pale, gloomy big hand suddenly stretched out from the Scarlet Lake, covering the sky and the earth, emitting a suffocating breath of death. At this moment, Lin Sun and the others all changed their faces. They felt an extremely oppressive breath of death, and their pores all stood up. They couldn't resist it at all. Even if they were all supreme overlords, they couldn't do it. The difference in strength was too great. Under this grasp, they all felt as pale and powerless as ants. Bang! At this incomparably crucial moment, a white bone oar shot through the air and actually forcefully pushed this deathly pale hand into the lake. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun and the others came to the pitch-black boat, but their clothes were all wet with cold sweat, and they still had a lingering fear. Splash! The skeleton boatman seemed to be very silent from beginning to end, as if he turned a blind eye to all this. He waved the white bone oar, and with a gentle stroke, the boat drifted to the distance. Lin Sun and the others looked at each other, and all saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Because they all judged that the power of the pale big hand just now was at least at the level of Saint Realm. Combined with the words of the skeleton boatman, under the blood lake, there were piles of white bones. Did it mean that many saints had died here? The more they thought about it, the more chilled they felt. The boat was not big, barely enough for 5 or 6 people to stand on. At the bow, a dim yellow oil lamp swayed, and the light was mottled. Ji Xingyao was looking at the skeleton boatman. Old Toad was staring at the dim yellow oil lamp at the bow. Mo Tianhe was looking around. Lin Sun was examining the black boat where they were standing. The atmosphere was eerily quiet, and only the sound of the white bone or paddling the blood lake could be heard. This skeleton is very scary. There is an inexplicable aura around it, and I can't see through it. Ji Xingyao transmitted her voice, and there was a trace of solemnity on her picturesque face. Everything she saw today was too strange. It was as if she was walking in the legendary Netherworld. Everything she saw had exceeded the scope of her understanding. Lin Sun and the others all nodded. This oil lamp is also very weird. It looks dim and mottled, but it is shrouded in a layer of mysterious power, and I can't see it clearly." Old Toad frowned. As a descendant of the three-legged golden toad, he could recognize all things and know all kinds of rare treasures. But at this moment, he couldn't see any clue. "Boatman, do you want to sell this oil lamp?" Old Toad asked boldly. The skeleton boatman turned a deaf ear, as if he didn't hear it at all. In its empty eye sockets, there was only a pair of green flames surging. Seeing this, Old Toad could only give up the idea of exploring. He just saw with his own eyes that the skeleton boatman just waved the white bone ore in his hand and suppressed the big pale hand with the power of the saint realm. His combat strength was not just a normal level of terrifying. It should be noted that in the absolute domain, there was no saint. But now, in this cave of God underworld, it was completely different. "Look!" Suddenly, Emotienha cried out in surprise. Following his gaze, they saw many strange and ominous things suddenly rushing out of the lake in the distance. There were ghastly pale large hands, wings bathed in blood, broken swords, sabers, spears. All of them emitted a shocking aura of death, and they gave rise to boundless blood-colored waves as they rushed over. At that moment there was a bang in Lin Sun's mind, and a picture of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood emerged. There were gods and demons fighting fiercely here, saints roaring in grief and indignation, and Buddhas crying in grief, and in the picture in Lin Sun's mind, a slender figure appeared. Although her dress was stained with blood, it was as if she was walking on flat ground. In this bloody picture, opponents with earth-shattering power fell behind her one by one. But her head had disappeared at some point. Boom! It was also at this moment that the picture in everyone's mind suddenly disappeared. Looking around, they saw blood tumbling to the sky and all kinds of attacks coming at them from all directions. The scene was extremely frightening. Strangely, neither the tumbling waves nor those attacks could shake the black boat in the slightest. And the skeleton boatman seemed to be indifferent to all of this, or rather, he turned a blind eye to it. "It's the power of that lamp." Old Toad suppressed the trembling in his heart and transmitted his voice in a low voice. Everyone also noticed that the dim yellow oil lamp hanging at the bow of the boat was swaying. The dim yellow light it spilled swirled and turned into an invisible force that guarded the boat's surroundings. It was like a boundary that couldn't be shaken no matter how much wind attacked it. Only then did Lin Sun and the others let out long sighs of relief. They all realized that without this boat's guidance, there was absolutely no way they could have crossed the lake this time. This place was too strange and dangerous, and they all felt a heavy sense of despair. Very soon, they were completely relaxed. Although the outside world was dangerous enough to frighten even saints, on this black boat, it was as if they were under the protection of an iron bastion. The dim yellow light was mottled and reassuring. "Where on earth will we arrive on this trip?" Lin Sun unconsciously rubbed the copper ring on his finger as he recalled the first time he had seen that headless figure, as well as the bloody scenes that had just surfaced in his mind. Who was she? Old Toad and the others were also lost in their own thoughts. Before coming here, none of them had imagined that this underworld cave would be so terrifying. What kind of heaven-defying fortune was sealed here? Whoosh! Gradually, the lake of blood calmed down, and only the sound of the oars moving could be heard. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun and the others saw the other side of the lake, but what they saw left them dumbfounded. There was a verdant spiritual mountain there, with birds chirping and fragrant flowers, and ancient trees towering into the sky. Even the sky was a deep blue, and auspicious clouds drifted about. Even before they arrived, an auspicious and fresh aura hit them in the face, making them feel relaxed and happy. In the lake, the smell of blood was like purgatory, full of strangeness and terror. But on the other side, the scenery was picturesque, like a pure and holy land isolated from the world. None of them had expected this. Their eyes widened, thinking that they were hallucinating and that everything seemed so unreal. Before they knew it, the black boat came to a stop. The skeleton boatman walked forward and took down the dim yellow oil lamp. Everyone knew that it was time to go ashore. Chapter 1235. On the shore, the soil was moist, the fresh smell of vegetation pervaded the air, the ancient trees were dancing, and the green mountains were charming. Setting foot here was like coming to another world, which made people feel relaxed and happy. The peaceful atmosphere made Lin Sun and the others completely relaxed. Looking back, they saw the skeleton boatman paddling slowly towards the depths of the lake. At the same time, a leisurely Taoist song sounded. The words couldn't be heard clearly, but there was a kind of boundless and unrestrained charm reverberating. It was like an immortal sailing away on a boat, singing aloud, unspeakably free and unfettered. Lin Sun and the others were all stunned. Who on earth was that skeleton boatman? How dangerous and strange the blood-red lake was, with great horror buried in it. But he paddled the boat on it, free and unrestrained like a legendary immortal. Ghost immortal? No one knew. In Lin Sun's view, as the black boat disappeared, the vast blood-red lake faded away bit by bit like a picture scroll. In the end, there was a vast fog. The black boat, the skeleton boatman, the blood-red lake, all disappeared. Only the vast fog remained. I'm afraid I'll never forget today's experience for the rest of my life, Ji Xingyao murmured. Her starry eyes were in a trance, her face was beautiful, and her white clothes fluttered in the wind, picturesque. The others agreed with her. First, they entered a strange tunnel, where they saw the legendary hellfire of Sin, Een Bone and Dark Flower. Then, they entered a stone forest that looked like a ghost domain. Standing stone statues, like hundreds of ghosts, spread out a picture of hell. Then, they took the black boat and crossed the blood-red lake. When he recalled the scenes he'd witnessed during this trip, they were all grotesque, dazzling, and horrifying. Who could forget them? Come on, let's go and see what kind of good fortune is hidden here. Old Toad rubbed his hands and looked at the beautiful green mountain in the distance. Wasn't the strange and ominous experience all the way to seek good fortune? Now, Old Toad was sure that there must be a great fortune hidden in this pure land. Let's go. Lin Sun gathered his thoughts and led the others ahead. To their surprise, this place wasn't big, as if it was isolated from the world. But spiritual herbs and spiritual materials could be seen everywhere in the green forest. In a short period of time, they had found more than 10 king herbs. There were purple tortoise poria, white speckled jade flower, ghost eye 9-striped vine. All of them were king medicines that had gone extinct in the outside world a long time ago. They were extremely rare and precious, and each of them had their own unique uses. Moreover, it was peaceful and tranquil along the way, and there wasn't any danger at all. This place is definitely a great paradise that's been sealed. Perhaps we're the first group of cultivators to arrive here since the ancient times. Mo Tianhe was also excited. The world here is covered by a unique law. I can only sense a radius of 10 li. Apart from that, there is nothing else. Ji Xingyao pondered for a moment. In my opinion, this should be a secret realm. Although it's not large, it's filled with incomparably rich fortunes. Lin Sun nodded in agreement. While they were talking, they had already passed through the forest and were heading towards the beautiful green mountain. This mountain was only 300 meters tall, but it was tranquil and beautiful. The spiritual qi in it was not only rich, but also contained an amazing breath of divinity. It was even richer than the Star Luo Mountain, the Flying Star Mountain, and the Mingtsue Mountain that Lin Sun had seen in the distant Fire Realm. In the cracks of the rocks, there was a sparkling and holy luster flowing. Lin Sun grabbed a handful of soil, which was so full of vitality that he was moved. The road to the mountain wasn't rugged. Along the way, Lin Sun and the others picked up all kinds of spiritual materials, spiritual fruits, and spiritual herbs. Halfway up the mountain, each of them had harvested at least a dozen king herbs, as well as some other spiritual herbs. It was so rich. It was a treasure mountain. Old Toad was clamoring to move the mountain away, but he gave up after a little try. Although this mountain was only 300 meters tall, it was as tough as an ancient divine mountain. It was impossible to shake it, let alone move it away. Halfway up the mountain, their field of vision suddenly opened up, and a large stone plateau appeared. A lush forest of purple bamboos grew in it. They were all as thick as the mouth of a bowl, and their leaves were purple as if they were polished from jade. As the wind blew, the shadows of the bamboos danced, and the bamboo leaves made a sound like a tide of thunder, but it wasn't harsh. Instead, it was indescribably graceful and ethereal. In the depths of the bamboo forest, a thatched cottage loomed. All of a sudden, Lin Sun and the others stopped and looked through the purple bamboo forest at the thatched cottage. Is someone living here? Old Toad was moved. Maybe this is the place where the owner of this secret realm lived. Lin Sun's black eyes brightened. Between his fingers, the copper ring was already slightly hot, producing a strong reaction, as if there was something in the grass hut that was summoning it. This made Lin Sun realize that they had come to the right place this time. Damn it, is this thunder sound purple bamboo? It's so big. When his attention shifted from the thatched cottage to the purple bamboo forest, Old Toad's eyes almost popped out and he drooled. Thunder sound purple bamboo. Ji Xingyao and Emo Tianhe couldn't help but gasp. In ancient times, there was a sage who evaluated the 4 great magic bamboos, and thunder sound purple bamboo was one of them. This bamboo took 1,000 years to take root, another 1,000 years to sprout, and every 1,000 years it would grow a segment. Every 9 segments it would undergo a metamorphosis. After 9 metamorphoses, it would become a first-class magic material in the world. If it was used to refine an imperial weapon, it would be of the highest quality. But more importantly, thunder sound purple bamboo's greatest use was that it was one of the main materials for refining holy treasures. In the outside world, only ancient orthodoxies planted thunder sound purple bamboo, but there weren't many of them. As far as Ji Xingyao knew, only the Dachenlin Temple in the Sacred Hermitage had the most thunder sound purple bamboo, but there were only 9 of them, and they were enshrined as the most precious treasures of the sect. But now, there was a thunder sound purple bamboo forest in the middle of the Green Mountain. Lin Sun's heart swayed and he couldn't stay calm. Thunder sound purple bamboo wasn't just a first-class magic material, its leaves were also rare spiritual medicine. Although it wasn't a king medicine, it had the magical effect of subduing inner demons, cleansing the Taoist heart, and exorcising evil. The owner of the thatched cottage is destined to be an extraordinary figure. Lin Sun and the others made a judgment at the same time. Let's go and have a look at the thatched cottage first. Lin Sun took a deep breath, restrained the impulse to collect thunder sound purple bamboo, and took the lead to walk into the bamboo forest. The others hurried to follow him. As soon as he stepped in, Lin Sun felt his field of vision change. The bamboo forest was still a bamboo forest, but he couldn't see the thatched cottage anymore. Looking around, he couldn't find the way out. An illusory formation? Lin Sun was shocked. As a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos, it was very unusual that he didn't sense the aura of the restriction at all. Be careful, everyone. I'll break the formation, and you follow closely. Speaking of this, Lin Sun's voice stopped abruptly. Looking back, he didn't know when Old Toad, Ji Xingyao, and Emo Tianhe had disappeared. From beginning to end, he didn't notice it at all. All of a sudden, Lin Sun's whole body tightened, and his black eyes were full of solemnity. They had been careless. Before, they all thought this was a peaceful secret place, and they had collected many spiritual medicines and spiritual materials along the way, so they thought there was no threat here. Who would have thought that there was an unknown mystery hidden in this peaceful atmosphere? Lin Sun stood where he was and glanced around, his expression uncertain. The purple bamboos were dancing, and the bamboo leaves were swaying, making a tide-like sound of thunder, drifting in this part of the world like the sound of nature. Not only could they not find the way out, but even the sky was completely covered by dense purple bamboo leaves. Lin soon took a deep breath, ran the wind-mocking eyes, and spread the power of his spiritual awareness to carefully observe and perceive. After a while, Lin Sun's mood became heavy. Even he couldn't see through the mystery of this place. It was conceivable that the prohibition covering the bamboo forest was absolutely beyond the scope of the understanding of a spiritual tattoo guru. After thinking about it, Lin Sun didn't dare to act rashly. He sat cross-legged on the ground and looked at the copper ring on his finger. Since entering the cave of God Underworld, it was this thing that had produced obscure fluctuations along the way, which led him here. Moreover, when he was outside the bamboo forest, just now, the copper ring was slightly hot, producing an obviously different strong feeling. But now, the copper ring fell into silence. What was going on? Was it just to lead him here and trap him here? Lin Sun frowned and thought. He gently rubbed the copper ring. After a long time, he made a decision and released his spiritual awareness to perceive the copper ring again. With his mastery of spiritual tattoos, it was possible to break through the dilemma in front of him, but he didn't know how long it would take, because he needed time to rub it little by little. At present, he didn't know where Old Toad and others were trapped or whether they were in danger. Therefore, he must solve the dilemma in front of him in the shortest time possible to help Old Toad and others get out. Therefore, he could only focus on the copper ring. His divine sense was like a tentacle, slender and sensitive. It noiselessly surged into the copper ring, and just like before, he didn't discover anything unusual. This made Lin Sun feel a lot heavier. However, at the moment when he withdrew his spiritual awareness, he suddenly noticed that there was an imperceptible obscure luster flashing on the surface of the copper ring. Lin Sun's heart stirred. He forced himself to concentrate and poured his spiritual awareness into the copper ring again. At the same time, his eyes were fixed on the copper ring. Suddenly, the obscure luster emerged again, which was firmly captured by Lin Sun. However, the luster was fleeting and couldn't be seen clearly at all. Lin Sun was unwilling to give up. He gritted his teeth and tried again. This time, he ran his cultivation and poured his spiritual awareness into the copper ring. Sure enough, the obscure luster appeared again. Moreover, as Lin Sun's strength poured in, the obscure luster suddenly shone brightly, sprinkling a dazzling rain of light. The whole purple bamboo forest began to shake violently. Chapter 12:36. The purple bamboo swayed, and the thunder was like a tide. In the bright luster of the copper ring, a slender figure in a white dress was gradually outlined, ethereal and illusory. Lin Sun was stunned instantly. It was the headless figure in a blood-stained dress. However, at this moment, her dress was as clean as snow, without any blood stains. Although the figure was illusory and blurred, her hair was still flowing like a waterfall, and her head was still there. Lin Sun was shocked, and finally dared to conclude that the copper ring silently entangled in his hair must be from this woman. Who was she? With the appearance of the woman, the violently shaking purple bamboo forest was silent, and the thunder was rising, ethereal and holy. Come with me. Her voice was like a clear flute, ethereal and clear. Then, she walked forward. Subconsciously, Lin Sun got up, suppressed all kinds of doubts in his heart, and followed her closely. Soon, the thatched cottage appeared, surrounded by wisteria and luxuriant flowers and trees, with a fresh and auspicious atmosphere. The woman stood in front of the cottage, silent for a long time, and sighed faintly, "Please sit down." In front of the cottage, there was a square stone table and 2 stone chairs. The woman sat down casually. Her figure was still illusory, ethereal and holy, so that people could not see her face clearly. Lin Sun took the order and sat down, and finally couldn't help asking, "Senior, may I ask?" The woman interrupted, "I'm just a broken imprint of will, so you don't need to call me senior, Not to mention, speaking of this, she was silent for a moment, and then said, "Since you have the gate to heaven, you are one of us, and you can call me fellow practitioner." The gate to heaven. Lin Sun was shocked, and a storm was set off in his heart. It was the first time that his gate to heaven was seen through by someone since he started his cultivation. "Why did you guide me here?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and asked. The woman in front of him was very unusual. Although she was just an imprint of will, she could see through the gate to heaven in his sea of consciousness. How could her origin be simple? Because of an unfulfilled wish, I stood guard here. Countless years have already passed. Now that the great era has arrived, I should also leave. The woman waved her sleeve, and a purple bamboo teapot and 2 purple bamboo cups appeared on the stone table. She picked up the teapot and tilted it, causing a strand of sparkling, translucent, and boiling hot purple-colored tea to flow out, and it emitted a refreshing fragrance that caused one's soul to feel intoxicated. With just a sniff, Lin Sun felt refreshed, his mind was clear, and all distractions were gone. He couldn't help but be moved. "It's my good fortune to be able to see you before I leave. I'd like to drink tea with you." The woman raised a purple bamboo cup and motioned to Lin Sun. Lin Sun raised his cup and drank with her. As the tea went down his throat, he felt the sweet fragrance spread all over his body, making him feel like he was floating in the air. Good tea. Lin Sun's black eyes brightened. Since he was already here, he would take things as they came. At this moment, he was completely relaxed and was not in a hurry to ask about his doubts. The woman put down the teacup and said, "Fellow cultivator, you're bound by many karma chains. Have you ever thought about leaving the realm of ancient desolation one day?" Lin Sun shook his head. He was bound by many karma chains indeed, so he had never considered leaving the realm of ancient desolation at present. The world is extremely dazzling and carries the karmic luck of the ages, but there's a time when it reaches its peak and declines in the end. Once fellow Taoist leaves the region of absolute peaks, you'll naturally understand that even if you step foot into the saint realm, if you don't escape the confinement, then your path of cultivation will definitely be severed here. The woman's voice was calm and ethereal. However, it's not the right time for you to think about this. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. He didn't know why the woman said this to him, but he realized a problem from her words. After entering the sage realm, if he didn't jump out of the realm of ancient desolation, he was doomed to be unable to continue his cultivation. Thinking of this, Lin Sun thought of Chun Linkong, the burning immortal. At that time, Chun Linkong led 108 gods to conquer the heavens, and then left his inheritance in the realm of burning immortals, so that the inheritance would not be lost after he left. In this case, did Chun Linkong also realize that if he didn't leave, his cultivation would be cut off in the realm of ancient desolation? "My fellow practitioner, after jumping out of the confinement, will we go to the starry sky ancient path?" Lin Sun asked. The woman nodded, yes. Lin Sun understood. He even had a bold idea that the realm of absolute peak was left by those strong practitioners who left the realm of ancient desolation in the ancient times. Perhaps their purpose was the same as that of Chun Linkong, to make the inheritance last forever and pass it on. Why were there so many opportunities and fortunes in the 3,000 worlds and the upper 9 realms? The answer was simple. Most of the great fortunes were left by those unparalleled strong practitioners who were qualified to set foot on the starry sky ancient path. Will it be impossible to come back after leaving? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. The woman shook her head and said, "Maybe, but it's doomed to be slim." Lin Sun was more and more sure of his speculation. Strong practitioners like Chun Linkong must have realized that it was very likely that they couldn't come back after leaving, so they left their inheritance. This was the fundamental reason. Immediately, Lin Sun got rid of the distracting thoughts. These things were too far away from him. Even if he knew more, it wouldn't make much sense. Lin Sun asked directly, "Taoism peer, my friends, they all have their own fortunes. As for how much they can get, it all depends on their own ability. You don't have to worry about them. With that, the woman pointed to the purple bamboo forest and said, "There are 3,000 purple bamboos, and each one is a fortune. There are ancient secret methods, cultivation experience, and inheritance." Lin Sun gasped. Only now did he realize that he, Old Toad and others had far underestimated the value of this purple bamboo forest. He'd originally thought that it was only a top-rate divine material in the heavens and the earth, yet never had he imagined that every single violet bamboo actually contained great fortune. This was incredible. Taoism peer, are you also very tempted? The woman asked. Lin Sun nodded. Who wouldn't be tempted in the face of such a fortune among the practitioners in the world? The woman said, "Let me ask you, what do you think of the Tao and method you have mastered?" Lin Sun was stunned and then said calmly, "Different from the world, different from the others. I follow the methods of the ancients and walk on my own path." The woman nodded and asked again, "In this case, do you have the confidence to surpass the ancients and walk on an unprecedented road?" Lin Sun didn't dare to answer this question. He had just set foot on the peak of the King realm. How dare he underestimate the wisdom of the ancients? "I may not be sure now, but I won't be sure in the future." Lin Sun took a deep breath and said firmly. The woman stood up and pointed to the 3,000 purple bamboos in the distance, saying, "In those days, there was someone like you who wanted to be a pioneer on the road of Tao. So he suppressed the inheritance of the 3,000 purple bamboos with his own Tao." Who? Lin Sun was shocked. Then, he suddenly understood and looked at the woman in front of him, saying, "It turns out to be you, Taoism peer." No wonder she called him kindred spirit and treated him as an equal. It turned out that the woman in front of him was also seeking an unprecedented Tao like him. However, she was obviously an ancient person and had never set foot on the King realm. But Lin Sun was sure that she must be an earth-shattering big shot. The woman didn't deny Lin Sun's guess, but said, "If you can do it, I will use my Tao and Dharma to have a look with you." Hearing this, Lin Sun was immediately moved. What did this mean? As long as he could suppress the inheritance of the 3,000 purple bamboos, he could understand and comprehend the Tao and Dharma of this woman. This was undoubtedly a great fortune that could only be encountered by chance, and it would be of immeasurable benefit to his future cultivation. Follow the ways of the ancients and follow his own Tao. If he could understand the Tao and Dharma of another peer, it could be imagined how great the harvest would be. "Would you like to have a try?" the woman asked. Now, Lin Sun finally understood that the Taoism peer in the woman's words was recognition of his Tao and could be regarded as a kindred spirit, not just a title of seniority. These two words had a different meaning for Lin Sun, because this was the only kindred spirit he had met so far in his cultivation. Okay. How could Lin Sun refuse? He immediately stood up and walked towards the purple bamboo forest without hesitation. The woman waved her sleeve. In an instant, in Lin Sun's vision, the purple bamboo forest suddenly changed, and each purple bamboo had a completely different kind of power and breath. They were like numerous peerless experts that stood towering there. Every single one of them had their own Tao and techniques, and they possessed extraordinary bearings and extraordinary postures. They were like 3,000 unrivaled heroes from different eras, shining with a brilliant light that illuminated the ages. Lin Sun took a deep breath, his mind clear and his black eyes firm. He had an invincible belief in his own Tao. Boom! Suddenly, the purple bamboo closest to Lin Sun shook and turned into a tall, illusory and vague middle-aged figure. "My Tao is invincible in the world. Do you dare to discuss Tao with me?" The voice was heroic and sonorous, revealing an indescribable spirit. Lin Sun was ethereal and flowing with Tao light. He cupped his hands and said, "I would like to have a try." Discussing Tao and deducing Tao and Dharma could show the level of the Tao. In short, it was a fight. "Please!" The middle-aged figure was like a rainbow, roaring proudly in the universe. As he rushed forward, endless Tao light flowed and spread like a tide. In his palm, a bronze spear broke out, accompanied by a fierce and unparalleled spirit of killing. It was invincible and domineering. Lin Sun looked neither sad nor happy. He didn't dodge, but took the initiative to face it head-on. Boom! The battle broke out like the collision of two blazing suns. As the saying goes, there can't be two suns in the sky. This was a battle of Tao. How could he show mercy? Although the opponent was strong, Lin Sun was also invincible. In the distance, the woman sat down again, picked up the purple bamboo teapot, filled a cup for herself, and sipped the tea gently. Her eyes were fixed on Lin Sun all the time. From the first sight of Lin Sun, she knew that he was a kindred spirit. Moreover, he was luckier than her and set foot on the unprecedented King realm. And this was the only regret in her heart that couldn't be made up. Chapter 12:37. Bang! The spear collided with the fist energy, producing a thunderous roar and splashing divine light. Lin Sun continued to attack with the Swanee seal. The middle-aged figure let out a long roar and brandished his spear in the air. The fierce, murderous spirit even broke the clouds. This was a battle of Tao. Both Lin Sun and his opponent were demonstrating their own Tao. But in a moment, the middle-aged figure was suppressed and admitted defeat. He put away his spear and cupped one hand in the other before his chest. "I'm far inferior to you in the battle of Tao." Lin Sun also cupped one hand in the other before his chest. "Thank you." Clatter, the middle-aged figure disappeared. On the other hand, a strand of enlightenment arose in Lin Sun's heart. Although his opponent was defeated, it allowed him to witness the so-called power to fight the heavens. This was a display of martial arts power to the extreme, and it benefited him greatly. "Let me fight with you." The purple bamboo swayed, and a petite and delicate figure appeared. She said, "I practice the art of illusion and pursue the art of illusion. Please enlighten me." Lin Sun was shocked and said, "Please." The battle broke out. In an instant, a magnificent rain of light swept out. Lin Sun's vision changed, and he appeared in the mine prison where he was when he was a child. In the dim room, Master Lu was inscribing spiritual tattoos. When he looked up and saw Lin Sun, he shouted angrily, "What are you doing?" Lin Sun walked to the corner silently. There was an old wooden table and a short stool. The wooden table was covered with beast skin, and there was a spirit rune brush with a bald tip. For as long as he could remember, this was the place where he learned the Tao of spirit runes. It had accompanied him since he was young. Sitting on the stool, Lin Sun looked up at Master Lu's back in a trance. "How dare you be lazy?" Master Lu suddenly stood up and scolded Lin Sun angrily. He had always been hot-tempered. "Master Lu, how nice it would be if you were still here." Lin Sun sighed softly and walked out of the room. Behind him, Master Lu was scolding him for being lazy and disobedient. Although his words were crude, they were full of concern. When he was a child, Lin Sun was angry about this. But when he grew up, he realized that it was Master Lu's strict discipline that enabled him to have today's achievements in spiritual tattoos. Unfortunately, Lin Sun knew it was all an illusion. Pushing open the door, all that greeted him was a vast expanse of darkness. Boom! With the roar of Lin Sun's chi, the scenes in front of him collapsed and disappeared like paper. However, when Lin Sun looked around, he found himself in Feiyun village and saw the village head and the villagers. An illusion within an illusion? A trace of admiration flashed through Lin Sun's black eyes, but all this was still not a problem for him. His state of mind was as firm as a blade and a sword that could cut through the sun, moon, ghosts, and gods. But to Lin Sun's surprise, in the following days, he appeared in the Forbidden City, Lin family, Green Deer School. Later on, there were many new experiences. There was the scene after he left the purple bamboo forest, as well as every illusion was so real. Similarly, after each illusion was destroyed, a new one would appear. It was as if he could no longer return to the real world. If it was any other cultivator, that cultivator would have probably been lost within it a long time ago. Because this illusion was like a real world, everything that one experienced in it was so real. As long as there was the slightest flaw in one's mental state, one would be lost, unable to tell whether everything before one's eyes was a dream or reality. Break! Lin Sun shouted loudly in his heart. Boom! All the illusions were like shattered glass, never to be seen again. At the same time, the petite illusory figure cupped her hands and said, "Your heart is as bright as the sun, which can illuminate the universe. I am not as good as you." Lin Sun also cupped his hands and said, "Thank you." Whoosh! The purple bamboo swayed, and a thin figure of a man swept out, saying, "I have a sword that can cut all the demons and monsters in the world. I would like to have a fight with you. Please." The battle broke out again. In the following time, Lin Sun passed all the difficulties and was invincible. His opponents included heroes with matchless combat power, spiritual cultivators who were proficient in illusions, and practitioners who had a physique as strong as dragons and elephants. All of them were brilliant and outstanding, and all of them could be the best for a period of time. Their Taoist paths and Taoist techniques were varied and unique, and it allowed Lin Sun to benefit greatly and comprehend a great deal. In such a battle, he completely forgot himself. As he comprehended more and more, his understanding of the martial Tao and his understanding of his own Tao were undergoing a metamorphosis. Among three people, there must be a teacher. Perhaps his opponent was no match for him, but his advantage in a certain aspect was enough for him to learn from. Time flew by. Lin Sun was still fighting, carrying out a different kind of discussion. His opponents were all strong people who had led the way in the past years and had great achievements in a certain field. And he fought against them with his own Tao and methods and broke them by force. The 100th game. The 200th game. The 300th game. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't feel tired at all. Rather than a battle, it would be more accurate to say that he was exchanging pointers and communicating with his peers from ancient times. All kinds of wonderful methods and paths bloomed like brilliant fireworks, which amazed Lin Sun. Then he silently remembered and absorbed them, turning them into his own understanding. In front of the hut, the woman had drunk the 4th cup of tea with a leisurely manner. She saw every battle in her eyes. The 1900th game. Boom! After defeating his opponent, an amazing momentum suddenly emerged around Lin Sun. The 9 strikes of shaking heaven had been thoroughly integrated. Since then, every punch he made had the power to shake the world. He didn't need to stick to the moves, just like a heavenly steed flying in the sky. This method had been deduced to the extreme by Lin Sun. Strictly speaking, the 9 strikes of shaking heaven used by Lin Sun at this moment was completely different from the original meaning. Because this punching method integrated all kinds of Lin Sun's understanding of martial arts and completely became his own method of martial arts. At first, it was, get its meaning and forget its form. But now, it was, get its true meaning and exchange it with my own. It was like there is law turned into no law and finally became my law. My law was my heaven. Even if others could see the mystery, it was difficult for them to learn a little bit. Good. In front of the hut, the woman praised in her heart. She could see that Lin Sun's understanding of martial arts had risen to a new level, and he began to pursue the road of my law. The 2300th game. The breakthrough of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon was thoroughly integrated. This method and the way of the real dragon complemented each other. Now, with Lin Sun's deduction, every word of Calamity had the meaning of the real dragon. Whether it was Bing Wu Bien, Baxia, Chao Feng Bien, Qianyo, Pu Lao Yizi, or Fu Shi, they all began to shed the dragon. The dragon had 9 sons, each different. Now, Bing Wu and the other 9 sons began to return to their ancestors and began to degenerate into dragons. He has mastered the core meaning of the unique skill of the real dragon. The woman was amazed. The 2700th game. The profound meaning of impermanence cut had broken through to the level of impermanence cut. In the past, Lin Sun only mastered a trace of the true meaning of impermanence cut, which was used as a trump card. But now, impermanence cut broke through again. Its power was so great that only instant of spring and autumn under the impartation of extreme could compare with it. That was to say, if impermanence cut was used with extreme, its power would be far greater than the first move of the void-breaking finger of Dian. He does have a lot of karma, the woman thought. She could see that the impartation of the 6 cuts of heavenly yuan had a great connection with the gate to heaven. Similarly, the broken blade itself was a karma. This was what attracted the woman's attention. The 2900th game. The power of instant of spring and autumn broke through to a higher level, from the initial level to the initial level. As soon as he pointed it out, he seemed to be in charge of the general trend of all ages and reversed the universe. At this time, the woman drank the 9th cup of tea. She shook the purple bamboo teapot and silently calculated in her heart. There wasn't much time left. The 3000th game. When he defeated his opponent, Lin Sun stood there. His mind relaxed from the extremely pure fighting state and fell into a trance. All kinds of comprehensions and experiences came to his mind like a tide. Boom! At this moment, his cultivation advanced to the late stage of the king realm, and the momentum he exuded also rose a lot. Is this the king of extinction realm? The woman murmured and sighed in her heart. Since ancient times, how many powerful people had regrets because of this realm? When Lin Sun was completely sober, he glowed with a kind of unearthly and ethereal temperament, like a sword that had just been tempered in the furnace, clear and clean. At this time, the purple bamboo teapot in the woman's hand was completely empty. She got up and looked at Lin Sun, saying, "I have cultivated for 3000 years. Before I left, I traveled alone in the world and killed countless enemies. Among my peers, no one can compare with me. I have learned thousands of Taoist incantations and method. But later, I only left one sword move, which is called no return." Her voice was plain, but it had a peerless demeanor. Especially the last sentence, which made Lin Sun's countenance change. Only one sword move was left, and there was no return? Taoist peer, please watch with me. Lin Sun took a deep breath and cupped his hands. The woman nodded. In an instant, her aura suddenly became extremely sharp, like a sword buried for thousands of years. Even though it was silent, its sharpness had never been eroded. A white and slender palm stretched out, and her fingers were like a sword, cutting in the void. It was so casual, without a trace of worldly aura. But Lin Sun was stiff all over, and then cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and his clothes were soaked with sweat. Later, his mind began to tremble, and his soul also tingled. His whole body was as tense as a big bow. In his vision, a sword chi appeared, which filled the universe and cut through the latitude and longitude, with indescribable meaning. It seemed to be filled with endless mysteries, yet it also gave off a simple feeling of returning to one's natural state. Its sharpness was unparalleled and unrestrained. Its momentum was unparalleled, and ghosts and gods were scared away. This kind of sword chi was simply unheard of. Although it hadn't been cut out, it had made Lin Sun feel small and suffocated, and his mind was completely shocked. This sword was called No Return. Chapter 1238. Lin Sun was sure that if this sword cut down, he would have no chance to escape. This sword contains the embodiment of my cultivation. Now I give it to you. One day, if you go to the ancient way of starry sky, I hope to meet you. A clear voice like that of a flute sounded. The woman raised her hand and the copper ring fell into her palm. Then, she put the sword chi into the copper ring and gave it to Lin Sun again. Thank you, fellow practitioner. Lin Sun woke up from the shock and received it solemnly. The woman seemed to laugh soundlessly. Back then, fellow Taoists like you and I had already left to search for the ancient path of the starry sky. We wanted to find a way out for the people of the future. Now that my wish has been fulfilled, it's time for me to leave. It suddenly dawned on Lin that the reason the woman was waiting here was to leave this sword style, no return. Before I leave, I might as well tell you that a fierce battle broke out in this absolute domain. Our opponents came from the other 8 domains, but in the end they were defeated, and we preserved the inheritance. The woman's voice was low. This is the opportunity that countless ancestors paid with their blood for, so that one day, our ancient desolation domain can rise again and not be suppressed by the other 8 domains. I hope you can also have such a mind. The woman's figure suddenly became blurred. Fellow practitioner, why did you appear as a headless body before? Lin Sun asked. This was what he was most concerned about. When I was fighting with the strong practitioners of the other 8 domains, it was taken away by someone. Such a shame. I will get it back in the future. And don't forget, my name is Wu Yang. The woman's voice also became blurred and finally disappeared. The thatched cottage was still there. In the distance, the thunder in the purple bamboo forest was like a tide, but there was no trace of the woman. Lin soon knew that it was a strand of remnant will imprint left by Wu Yang. Now the knot in his heart had been solved and gone with the wind. After a long time, Lin Sun let out a long breath of turbid air. Thinking of what he had experienced before, his heart was inexplicably a little complicated. They met once, but Wu Yang gave him the copper ring and guided him into the cave of divine underworld, through the weird cave path, through the evil ghost stone forest, and across the blood lake to arrive here. All of this was to leave this sword move, no return. Lin Sun unconsciously rubbed the copper ring in his hand, took a deep breath, and looked at the purple bamboo forest in the distance. Hey, Brother Lin, you are the first to come out? Mo Tianhe staggered out. When he saw Lin, he couldn't help but be surprised. But soon, he said excitedly, Brother Lin, what opportunity did you get this time? After defeating some opponents, my strength has increased by quite a bit. What about Brother Mo? Lin Sun said casually. He could see the joy between Mo Tianhe's eyebrows. Obviously, Mo Tianhe had obtained a great fortune in the purple bamboo forest. Ha! I'm different from you. I obtained an ancient ultimate technique, and its might is boundless. It even makes me gasp in amazement. Mo return of the sect of to of Lin. Heaven Lin of Lin to say to Lin to of mountain of Sun. Of the Mo, you've come out? At this time, Ji Xingyao also walked out. She was dressed in snow-white clothes. She was as beautiful as a painting. She was like a fairy. Mo Tianhe couldn't help being dazzled by her charm. Lin Sun nodded. Mo Tianhe asked, Junior Sister Ji, what kind of opportunity did you get? Ji Xingyao said indifferently, a book of cultivation experience left by a predecessor. It's very good and will be of great help to my future cultivation. Although her words were calm, Lin Sun could still see that Ji Xingyao was in a good mood. Obviously, she was very satisfied with the opportunity. While the three were talking, there was a burst of angry cursing in the purple bamboo forest. Then, the old toad ran out as if his butt was on fire, looking very embarrassed. Damn it! You just wanted to cut down a bamboo. Why did you strike me with lightning? The old toad was scorched and dusty, which made people laugh. Obviously, he intended to collect the thunder-purple bamboo, but he was struck by lightning instead. Can't this bamboo be collected? Mo Tianhe asked. The thunder-purple bamboo was one of the 4 great magic bamboos in the world, and it had endless magical uses. As long as it's not afraid of being struck by lightning, it's fine. The old toad rolled its eyes and encouraged Mo Tianhe. Why don't you try? In my opinion, you can definitely do it. Although he knew the old toad was up to no good, Mo Tianhe still couldn't help it. He didn't believe that he would be reduced to the old toad's level with his ability. A moment later, Emo Tienha's miserable howl came from the purple bamboo forest. Then, he ran out holding his head like a rat, his hair standing on end, and his hands and feet twitching from time to time. The old toad suddenly covered its belly and burst into laughter. Emo Tienha deserved to be struck by lightning because he didn't believe it. He looked at Ji Xingyao and said, "Fairy Ji, why don't you have a try?" There was no way Ji Xingyao would be fooled. Although the opportunity was good, the old toad and Emo Tienha had been struck to such a state. She naturally knew that the thunder note purple bamboo wasn't that easy to obtain. Lin Sun was a little hesitant. The thunder purple bamboo was extremely valuable and even more precious than the king medicine. It would be a pity if she couldn't take it away. "Let me try." Lin Sun stepped forward. The old toad hurriedly advised, "You'd better come back. Once you take action, you'll be besieged by all the thunder purple bamboos. Not everyone can withstand that power." Emo Tienha also thought so. However, the next scene almost caused their eyeballs to pop out of their socket. As Lin Sun waved his sleeves, a thunder purple bamboo was easily uprooted. He couldn't help but look back in confusion, saying, "It's just SOSO. This, the old toad and Emo Tienha were dumbfounded. They had almost been killed by the lightning just now. Who would have thought that the tables would turn when it was Lin Sun's turn? Clatter! The thunder purple bamboo that had been uprooted was originally 300 meters long, but as it was put away, it immediately began to shrink until it was only 1 foot long and as thick as a child's arm. Surrounded by purple chi, it was crystal clear and incomparably magnificent. This was a magic material. Although it was only 1 foot long, its value was enough to make a saint envious. "Let me try again." "Me too." The old toad and Emo Tienha couldn't bear it anymore. Gritting their teeth, they took action again with a look of disbelief. Even Ji Xingyao was a little tempted. But soon, the two of them were convulsed by the lightning and smoke came out of their mouths and noses. They both wanted to cry but had no tears. They were being treated differently. Ji Xingyao immediately suppressed the impulse in her heart and secretly rejoiced. Lin Sun waved his sleeves and uprooted another thunder purple bamboo. His relaxed appearance made the old toad and Emo Tienha speechless. Lin Sun understood that he had fought with the strong figures in these 3,000 thunder purple bamboos before. Imperceptibly, he had suppressed them and obtained the qualification to collect the thunder purple bamboos. Boom! However, just as Lin Sun was about to continue collecting, the tightly closed door of the hut suddenly collapsed at this moment. Then, a vortex appeared where the hut had collapsed. It was a path. Clatter! At the same time, the whole purple bamboo forest shook violently. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, shaking the universe. Then, the magnificent green mountain also began to shake violently, as if everything in front of it was about to collapse and collapse. Not good. Everyone's heart trembled. "Let's go." The old toad realized that this magical secret realm was about to close. If they didn't leave now, they would probably be trapped here. Boom! Before his voice died away, the whole mountain began to sink. Lin Sun was speechless. He had originally planned to collect the whole purple bamboo forest, but obviously he couldn't. But before leaving, Lin Sun seized the time and collected more than 100 thunder purple bamboos in one breath. They all turned into 1 foot long and were put away by him. Boom! As soon as their figures disappeared into the vortex passage, the green mountain behind them, together with the purple bamboo forest, completely collapsed. The whole holy and peaceful secret realm disappeared just like that. The night was as dark as ink, and the surroundings were silent. This was a wilderness. The grass and trees on the ground were as black as ink, glowing with a strange and quiet luster in the night. "Where are we?" Lin Sun and the others had been transported here. Looking around, they couldn't quite figure out what was going on. But they were sure that they were still in the underworld cave. Do you still remember? There were so many forks in the cave that they all led in different directions. The old toad pondered. I suspect that the ends of these forks all lead to this area. Let's take a look first. Lin Sun made a decision and immediately led the group forward in the night. The world was shrouded in darkness. The rocks and plants were all black, and the atmosphere was silent and extremely oppressive. Before long, they saw a group of cultivators, and their spirits lifted. Friend, may I ask where this is? Lin Sun went forward and asked. The other party had been extremely vigilant, but their expressions relaxed a lot when they saw that Lin Sun was just asking for directions. You've just entered, right? This is the underworld. Only the strong who can make it out of the forks in the cave can reach this place. A young man said casually. So, a lot of people have already gathered here? The old toad couldn't help asking. Exactly. These cultivators didn't linger. They hurried away, looking very vigilant. The underworld, Lin Sun pondered. He'd truly never imagined that the so-called underworld cave would actually be so huge, and this meant that different areas here were bound to contain different fortuitous encounters and fortunes. Next, they continued forward. Along the way, they occasionally encountered some strong cultivators, but all of them were in a hurry and had vigilant expressions. However, Lin Sun and the others were still able to discern that all the cultivators they encountered along the way were clearly rushing in the same direction. When they noticed this, Lin Sun and the others followed. The underworld hall has appeared. Hurry! Before long, a loud shout that revealed excitement resounded, and then a group of cultivators flew through the void and sped towards the distance like the wind. Chapter 1239. Divine Underworld Palace. Ji Xingyao was stunned, and then her clear eyes lit up. Do you remember the purpose of our trip? The great fortune that has been sealed for ages is hidden in it. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Old Toad rubbed his hands. Lin Sun didn't care. Since entering the forbidden land of sticks, he had gained a lot of amazing benefit. First, he refined a blood god and obtained a source of life soul, which improved his divine soul power. Then, he entered the tomb world and absorbed 6 congenital Taoist fires, including the wonderful Taoist fire, and more than 10 other original Taoist fires. Later, he entered the cave of divine underworld, met Wu Yang in the Green Mountain secret realm, and fought 3,000 battles in the purple bamboo forest, which made his cultivation of martial arts undergo many transformations. Moreover, he even obtained the sword move, No Return, that Wu Yang left behind. In addition, there were also a lot of royal medicines and spiritual materials. It could be said that even if he left now, Lin Sun wouldn't have any regrets. And as far as he knew, the more great the fortune was, the more terrible the danger it was accompanied by. For example, this divine underworld palace had long been targeted by many other cultivators. How could such a great fortune that had been sealed for ages be obtained so casually? But Lin Sun wouldn't refuse, because he knew that neither Old Toad nor Ji Xingyao would give up at all. In this case, there was no harm in accompanying them. More importantly, Lin Sun knew that Old Toad still had a lot of anger in his heart and wanted to avenge his humiliation on Wang Xuanyu of Tai Taoism. According to Lin Sun's estimation, Wang Xuanyu would definitely not miss this great fortune related to the divine underworld palace. Let's go. Everyone moved forward. The world shrouded in darkness was cold and gloomy. The mountains, rocks, grass, and trees all showed a strange dark color, which made the atmosphere very depressing. Moreover, the more they went forward, the stronger the invisible oppressive aura was, as if there was something strange and ominous hidden in the darkness, which made people's hair stand on end. Lin Sun and others were all vigilant. Run! Suddenly, a howl sounded in the distant darkness, full of panic and uneasiness. Motherf ***, what the hell is this? Go! Then, a series of angry shouts could be heard. The earth began to shake and rumble, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were charging out from the distant darkness. Lin Sun and the others immediately stopped. Is this the underworld's army? Someone roared. Meanwhile, Lin Sun and the others noticed numerous dazzling streaks fleeing in the darkness, and they were groups of cultivators. However, their expressions were filled with panic. Behind them was an army that was like a tidal wave. The blood skeletons rode bone birds and bone beasts with bone weapons in their hands. Their bodies were shrouded in black mist, and they looked like the legendary Netherworld soldiers. There were thousands upon thousands of them, and they were densely packed like the tide as they covered the distant heavens and the earth. Such a scene was like the door to hell had been opened, and the evil spirits, yikshas, and nether soldiers hidden within had charged out at the same time. The scene was horrifying and horrifying. There was no lack of Extinction King realm figures amongst those cultivators that were fleeing, and there were even many disciples from ancient sections. But now they were fleeing for their lives. F***ck. Old Toad swore and its expression changed dramatically. Let's go. Lin Sun and the others couldn't care about anything else, and they turned around and fled. It was like a beast tide passing through, or like an army of thousands of Netherworld soldiers charging forward. Once they were swept into it, the consequences would absolutely not be good. Thunderous rumbles resounded in the distance, and the black mist raged and surged like a tidal wave, completely drowning the heavens and the earth. Lin Sun's divine sense was extremely powerful, and he instantly sensed that the underworld army, whether it was the skeleton cavalry, bone birds, or bone beasts, all of them were suffused with a shocking aura of death. Puff! Blood splattered, and an enormous scarlet skylark was pierced through by a bone spear while fleeing. Its body fell to the ground, and it was instantly trampled into pieces. It was a horrible sight. Nearby, a group of cultivators let out shrill and miserable cries as a group of bone birds rushed over, and their sharp claws were covered in a terrifying aura of death. There were more than 10 of them, but they were instantly killed, and a rain of blood sprayed down like a waterfall. This scene was bloody and terrifying. Roar! A roar resounded in the sky, and then an enormous bone dragon that was over 10 kilometers long soared into the sky. It was too enormous, like a nether dragon. Its body rose and fell like a mountain ridge, and it emanated an aura of death that drowned the sky everywhere it passed. Merely its voice shook some cultivators to the point their entire bodies trembled while their hearts ached, and they coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. After that, they were mercilessly killed by the army that charged over. Bang! The bone dragon spat out an expanse of glossy green phosphorescence, and it poured down like a waterfall. It melted the sky and covered an extremely wide area. On the spot, a few experts were unable to dodge, and their bodies melted like candles while even their souls were incinerated. Remember, gather at the Nether Hall. Lin Sun spoke swiftly with an extremely solemn expression. They'd suffered the impact as well. It wasn't that they weren't able to flee quickly, but all of them noticed that the vast underworld army was all around them as they fled. Bang! Lin Sun had just finished speaking when he was besieged by over 10 skeletons that rode bone horses, and then he was drowned within the army. If one looked down from the sky, the entire heavens and the earth were covered in an army that flowed like tidewater, and the cultivators were like inconspicuous little waves amidst the army. Lin Sun was unable to determine if Old Toad and the others believed him, but he couldn't be bothered about all of this because he'd encountered a threat as well. The smell of blood suffused the air while the sounds of battle shook the heavens, and shrill cries and howls resounded throughout the surroundings. Even if it was a supreme monarch, they seemed to be extremely pale and powerless after being swept into this boundless army. At the end of the world of darkness was an expanse of ancient ruins that seemed like ruins. Only a black palace stood towering there, and it emanated a boundless aura like the embodiment of darkness, causing one's heart to palpitate. At this moment, the door to the palace was closed tightly. Not too far away from the palace were a few dozen figures standing in groups of 3 to 5, and they were distributed in different areas. At the center was a handsome young man in a black Taoist robe. With his back to the dark palace, He looked at the boundless army in the distance, his eyes flowing with a frightening divine light. Looking closely, a pair of mysterious symbols emerged in his eyes, one black and one white, like a yin and yang fish, extremely magical. This person, of course, was Wang Xuanyu. Everyone, the army of the underworld, has swept across the border. I'm afraid that no one can reach this place except us. He spoke with a smile, his voice clear and bright. The experts distributed in other areas looked a little strange, and they looked at Wang Xuanyu with a hint of fear in their eyes. Previously, the appearance of the divine underworld palace had caused a strange phenomenon between heaven and earth. Accompanying it was a boundless army. At that time, they all clearly saw Wang Xuanyu take out a pitch-black bone horn and make a deep beast sound in the void. It was under the spread of the sound of the beast horn that the mighty army of the underworld seemed to be under control and rushed in all directions. This seemed incredible. Wang Xuanyu controlled a terrifying army with just a beast horn. Who would dare to believe it? It was also because of this that everyone had fear in their hearts. Cultivator Wang, don't you think it's a bit too cruel to do this? Someone frowned and snorted. The spread of the army was like a scourge, and was bound to bring a heavy blow to the other cultivators distributed in this world. And all of this was destined to be inseparable from Wang Xuanyu. Everyone, isn't it better to have fewer competitors? Speaking of which, you should be grateful to me. After all, it was me who helped you eliminate many opponents. Wang Xuanyu chuckled and glanced at the people in the field, his expression calm. Almost all of the cultivators present were from different ancient orthodoxies like him. They were extremely powerful, and there was no lack of ancient freak. When the gate of the divine underworld palace opened, these cultivators would become his competitors. However, Wang Xuanyu was not afraid. The divine underworld palace. I wonder if the legendary jar of divine underworld blood really exists. Wang Xuanyu no longer paid attention to the others and looked at the dark palace that was already standing in the ruins thoughtfully. The other experts also had their own thoughts. 2 hours later, the tide-like army receded and disappeared into the vast darkness. The atmosphere quietened down once more, but the air was still filled with the stench of blood, showing how terrifying everything that had just happened was. In this catastrophe, no one knew how many people had died. Lin Sun stood alone in a big pit full of corpses and looked around. Although he survived this catastrophe, he was also bathed in blood, a little embarrassed, and his body was injured in many places. This place is really dangerous. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. The wounds all over his body had healed, and his physical strength was also recovering rapidly under the supplement of the royal medicine. At this time, he had already been separated from Old Toad, Ji Xingyao, and Mo Tianhe. According to his estimation, with the fighting power of Old Toad, they should not be in danger of death. Whoosh! After a long time, when he completely recovered, Lin Sun breathed a long sigh of relief, stopped thinking and rushed forward. Along the way, he only met some scattered cultivators, all of whom were seriously injured and extremely miserable. But there was no trace of Old Toad. Wang Xuanyu, you will die a horrible death. Suddenly, a scream of resentment rang out. Lin Sun suddenly turned his head and saw a woman lying in a pool of blood. She was severely injured. Her chest and abdomen were cut open, and her head was broken. She was at her last gasp and would die soon. There was endless unwillingness and resentment in her expression. When she noticed Lin Sun's gaze, she opened her mouth with difficulty and said intermittently, "This catastrophe was caused by Wang Xuanyu." Before she could finish her sentence, she had already passed away. Even in death, her expression was full of hatred. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. What ability did Wang Xuanyu have to cause such a great catastrophe? After a moment of silence, Lin Sun took a deep breath and continued to move forward. In the far darkness, he could vaguely see a ruin-like relic. P.S. On the first day of the month, I strongly call for the guaranteed monthly tickets. In addition, some of the children's shoes who won prizes in the last activity haven't received their gift. The list is as follows: Chubby Do, Pilipum, Qingdong, Chunfenghe, Demon Lin, Goldfish Diligently Update, Goldfish's Loyal Fan, Immortal Lin, Brother is Very 666666666, Shuyu 52465928, Dalong Sesame Cake, Young Yi Ling, Shuyu 53254545, Little Fish Reading, Little Wang Zi, Goldfish Powder. Please log into your Zongheng account, check My Messages, add customer service QQ, and leave your harvest address. Hurry up, it's about to expire. In addition, the prizes are being sent out one after another. T-shirts will take some time because they need to be customized. Chapter 1240. It was an expanse of ruins, and it was covered in ruins and a scene of desolation. It seemed like a world-shocking battle had occurred here a very long time ago, and it had transformed this place into ruins that existed until now. At this moment, a black palace stood towering above these ruins, and it was covered in a faint, boundless aura. It wasn't tall, yet it emanated a boundlessly vast, imposing aura. It stood towering there as if it hadn't moved at all since time immemorial. This was probably the Nether Hall. When Lin Sun arrived here, numerous cultivators rushed over in succession. Obviously, they were just like Lin Sun. There weren't many cultivators who had survived that catastrophe. The door of the Nether Hall had been opened, and it was boundlessly dark within it. However, this was unable to stop the footsteps of those experts from entering it. The reason was very simple. This was a heaven-defying fortune that had been sealed for eternity. Even if they were clearly aware that heaven-defying dangers were lurking within it, would anyone give up? Moreover, none of the experts who were able to survive and make it all the way here were ordinary people. Many people noticed Lin Sun, and they revealed vigilant expressions. On the other hand, when they saw Lin Sun just stand there and not enter the Nether Hall, besides causing them to be vigilant, they couldn't help but be slightly bewildered. But in next to no time, they couldn't be bothered about all of this and charged into the Nether Hall. Why haven't the old toad and the others made an appearance? Could it be that they've already entered this hall before I arrived? Lin Sun waited for a long time, yet didn't see any trace of the old toad and the others, and he couldn't help but be slightly bewildered. After pondering for a moment, he arrived before a damaged rock, and then he carved a line of words on it with his palm before he stabbed the rock into the ground at the side of the hall. After that, he took a deep breath and stepped into the Nether Hall as well. It was a boundless expanse of darkness behind the entrance of the hall, and one couldn't even see their own fingers. However, when they entered it, it was a completely different world, and a ruined ruin appeared before them. There were pavilions, altars, winding corridors, herb gardens, beast gardens, flower fields. But all of them were ruined, deathly silent, and had transformed into ruins. Moreover, there were traces of battle everywhere. There were palm prints, saber marks, and dried bloodstains. They hadn't been destroyed after experiencing the corrosion of countless years, and it seemed extremely shocking. Lin Sun swept the surroundings with his gaze, yet he didn't even have the time to investigate clearly when a fierce gale assaulted him. Whoosh! This was a flying blade that was shaped like a shuttle. It was entirely pitch black, and it was swift and fierce like a black bolt of lightning. It was inconceivably fast. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and flicked his fingers. With a bang, the flying blade exploded. To Lin's surprise, a saber, a white jade cauldron, and a divine sword appeared at the same time from all directions where he stood. A pincer attack. The war blade was like a waterfall flowing with Tao light. The precious cauldron surged with brilliant totems, suppressing all directions, and the divine sword displayed a wondrous technique incomparably sharp. Such a sudden attack was seamless, blocking all Lin Sun's retreat. There was no doubt that there was more than one opponent, and all of them were extremely powerful and had great teamwork. Unfortunately, they underestimated Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't dodge. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the oncoming saber. With the strength of his palms and fingers, a tsunami-like power surged out. Crack! Although this saber was not a supreme weapon, it was almost the same. But at this moment, it was crushed by Lin Sun's grasp. In the dark, there was a cry of alarm. A figure moved far away like a ghost. Boom! At the same time, other attacks had approached. Around Lin Sun, a piece of bright light flowed and turned into symbols of tribulation, spreading suddenly. First, the white jade cauldron was suppressed, making a shrill wail and exploding into a rain of light all over the sky. Then the divine sword was broken inch by inch. Moreover, the remaining power of the symbols of tribulation didn't decrease. It swept out, revealing an invincible power. The strongmen hiding in the dark changed their faces suddenly. They flashed and retreated to the distance. They all realized that they had met a tough opponent. Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning. He grasped in the air, and the power of Bashya prohibition came out. Damn it! A young man in a gray robe was stagnant, like a bug stuck in a spider's web, unable to move. He was so shocked that he shouted angrily, "Puff!" But immediately, his body suddenly died, turning into a rain of blood. Yet now, the strength of the Bashya restriction had already shown signs of shedding its wings, and it was more than 2 times stronger than before. So, killing an ordinary opponent was utterly as easy as blowing off dust. Oh no! In other directions there were 3 figures fleeing. When they saw this scene, they were all so shocked that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. They had ambushed here before. With tacit cooperation and strong combat power, they killed many targets in a sneak attack and obtained spoils of war. Who would have thought that they failed at this moment? Even though the enemy was alone, he was formidable to the point it caused their hearts to tremble. With a raise of his hand, he'd broken through their surprise attack and killed one of their companions. Go! Damn it! With a loud shout, they rushed in different directions at an extremely fast speed, showing the level of a peerless king. Unfortunately, in Lin Sun's eyes, it was not enough at this moment. As early as in the tomb world, he was able to easily kill the white-robed young man, Wu Shanlin, and even Wu Lingdao, a peerless figure who had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity. Now, his strength had improved a lot in the 3,000 discussions in the purple bamboo forest. It was no exaggeration to say that the peerless king in the same realm was not enough in Lin Sun's eyes. In the twinkling of an eye, Lin Sun had already punched 3 times in the air. Every single punch was branded with an imposing aura that belonged solely to him, and it contained a technique that belonged solely to him. It shook the heavens and the earth and was boundlessly formidable. This was the martial power of the realm of my method. With 3 explosions, the bodies of the 3 figures that had split up exploded at the same time, like flies that had been swatted to death. It could be said that he killed the enemy as easily as killing a chicken. A bunch of trash. How dare you rob others with such little ability? You're courting death. Lin Sun looked contemptuous. He glanced around and walked towards the depth. Demon God Lin is getting more and more abnormal. As soon as Lin Sun left, a strong man who had just entered the Nether Palace couldn't help sighing with emotion. He had seen the scene just now, and his scalp was numb. A peerless king was so powerful that it was rarely seen since ancient times. But in Lin Sun's hands, it was as fragile as paper. The Nether Palace was obviously a small world. It was extremely large, and there were rows of ancient buildings in it, but most of them had collapsed for countless years. Lin Sun didn't stop all the way. Before he arrived here, many experts had entered here long ago, and there was utterly no need to think about it. So long as there were any valuable treasures along the way, they were bound to be completely seized. A dry lotus pond appeared, and in front of it stood a broken stone tablet with the words, "Rebirth," written on it. These 2 words moved Lin Sun. It was said that there was a rebirth pool in the netherworld, which could be used to expiate the souls of the dead and reincarnate. Unfortunately, apart from this stone tablet, there was nothing else worth paying attention to. As he went on, Lin soon saw some strange but frightening words one after another. In front of the dilapidated palace, there was a horizontal board with the words, Ghost Judge. In the broken and collapsed ancient temple, there was a broken tablet with the words, 6 Paths of Not Being Empty. In addition, there were also words, Sunken Land, Sunluo Field, Soul Rotating Platform, Hell River, and so on. Every name seemed to have a shocking origin and legend, as if they had really come to the netherworld, not the human world. However, all of them had already collapsed, resembling ruins. Along the way, Lin soon could already judge that there must have been an extremely terrible fight here a long time ago. That was because the traces of the battle could still be seen in every inch of the ruins. Get out! Suddenly, there was a roar in the distance. Along with the voice, there were fierce collisions echoing. Lin Sun was shocked. He suddenly raised his head and spread out his huge spiritual awareness. Thousands of meters away, there was a black stone platform shaped like a hill. At this time, a group of people was fighting fiercely on the black stone platform. Boom! The divine light was blazing and the light of Tao was roaring. It was extremely fierce and dangerous. It could be clearly seen that these strong men were fighting for the control of the black stone platform, as if there was something on it that was enough to make them jealous. Lin Sun quietly approached and observed carefully, but found that they were all strange faces. There was no trace of Old Toad. The black stone platform was 9 meters high and shaped like an altar. It was imprinted with old patterns, such as yikshaws patrolling, ghosts walking at night, hellfire shining in the sky, and blood river rushing. Every stone carving was full of strange and penetrating gloominess. In front of the black stone platform, there was a stone tablet collapsed on the ground. From the broken and blurred writing, it could still be recognized that it was 3 Life Rock. 3 Life, generally speaking, was the previous life, the present life, and the future life, representing the past, the present, and the future. Obviously, this black stone platform was the so-called 3 Life Rock. Soon, Lin Sun noticed that there was an ancient scripture engraved on the ground at the top of the rock. The amazing thing was that the ancient scripture seemed to be moving. Every character was like an earthworm, twisting and flickering densely, flowing with obscure luster. The reason why those top kings fought must be to fight for this scripture. Moreover, this scripture was engraved on the ground, so it was obvious that it couldn't be taken away. In other words, this battle decided who could control the 3 Life Rock, so that they could comprehend this ancient scripture. Lin Sun spread out his spiritual awareness and suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He noticed that there were still many hidden breaths in the vicinity of the rock. Obviously, there were still strong men secretly watching here. Tantai Lu, your Tai Taoism has already seized so many opportunities. Now you still want to compete with us for this ancient scripture. It's too unsightly. Someone roared in the battle. Tai Taoism? Lin Sun looked over and saw a young man in a bright yellow robe in the middle of the battle. He smiled indifferently and said, "The fight for opportunities depends on who has the bigger fist. Now that I have the bigger fist, why can't I occupy this place?" There was an unconcealable pride in his voice. Chapter 1241. Tantai Lu did have the capital to be arrogant. Alone, he suppressed the other strong people and made them unable to approach him. His combat power was superb. Everyone knew that in Tai Taoism, Wang Xuanyu was undoubtedly the most dazzling figure and was regarded as the leader of the younger generation of his sect. But Tantai Lu was also not to be underestimated. Although his reputation was not as great as Wang Xuanyu's, he was not inferior to Wang Xuanyu in terms of foundation and combat power. More importantly, he was an ancient freak. Boom! On the 3 Life Rock, Tantai Lu fought alone in all directions. Dressed in a bright yellow robe, he was like the son of heaven. His every move burst out dazzling Taoist light. Bang! Soon, an enemy was defeated. His chest was smashed by Tantai Lu's palm, and he flew out upside down. The other strong people's faces changed greatly, and their momentum was severely damaged. I said, "You have no chance." Tantai Lu looked calm and his voice was full of absolute confidence. His eyes were like lightning sweeping around other places, and the rats hiding in the dark, "You'd better get out of here before I get angry." His voice was like thunder, and the expressions of the strong people hiding in the dark changed slightly. On the Three-Life Rock, Tantai Lu was not the only successor of Tai Taoism. There were 4 other people guarding around, but none of them made a move. Because Tantai Lu alone was enough to suppress the whole field. Lin Sun keenly noticed that some strong people in the dark had decisively given up and left quietly. But there were also some people who stayed, obviously unwilling to leave like this. "Humph, don't blame me for being ruthless." Tantai Lu snorted coldly and suddenly burst out his divine power. In a flash, he suppressed 2 more opponents and killed them ruthlessly. Like Wu Lingdao, this guy has also set foot in the first tribulation of longevity. No wonder he dares to look down on us. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. At this moment, a voice sounded in his ear. "I'm Wang Xing of Huangting Sword Sect. Nice to meet you, Taoism Peer Lin." Lin Sun looked calm, but his divine sense detected a young man in a snow-white Confucian robe standing in a ruin not far away. "Just say it." Lin Sun also knew that the Yellow Court Sword Sect was an ancient orthodoxy in the Big Dipper world. "We are willing to cooperate with fellow Taoist Lin and attack together to repel the Greater One Taoist sect. Then we can share that ancient scripture. What does fellow Taoist Lin think?" Wang Xing said bluntly. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, he noticed that at least 6 spiritual awareness forces were watching him. Obviously, the owners of these divine senses were on the same side as Wang Xing, and they wanted to form an alliance with him to deal with Tantai Lu and the others. "Fellow Taoist Lin, you're all alone. Although your battle prowess is extraordinary, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for you to seize that ancient scripture." Wang Xing's voice was low and calm. "If you cooperate with us, not only can you comprehend that ancient scripture together, you can also obtain our friendship." Lin Sun was still thinking about it, but when he heard this, he frowned. Seeing Lin's silence, Wang Xing seemed to be a little unhappy and said, "Taoism Peer Lin, I have given you a chance. I hope you can make a decision soon. Otherwise, when we fight later, I'm afraid," Lin Sun said. "Afraid of what?" Wang Xing's eyes flashed with cold light. "I'm afraid that we may be enemies instead of friends." There was a hint of threat in his voice. Lin Sun immediately understood that Wang Xing and the others had never thought of cooperating with him at all. The reason why they wanted him to join them was that they were worried that Lin Sun would also intervene in the competition. "Brother Lin, it's not easy for you to cultivate. We admire you very much for your achievements today. But if you insist on going your own way, I'm afraid the consequences won't be good." Wang Xing said, "Well, as long as you promise not to get involved in this matter and just watch from the sidelines, you can also obtain our friendship." He spoke quickly because the fierce battle on the Three-Lifetime Rock was coming to an end. "Your friendship?" Lin Sun's lips curled up. "How much is it worth? Since you've made it clear, I might as well tell you that it's not too late to leave now. Otherwise, once the battle starts, it won't be so easy to leave." "You?" Wang Xing's face darkened and his heart was filled with anger. He thought that he had been very humble, but who would have thought that Demon Lin didn't appreciate it at all? Wang Xing's companions couldn't help sneering in their hearts. This Demon Lin was really as rampant as the legend said. Did he really think that he could be lawless after massacring a few famous mountains and blessed lands? "You don't know how to appreciate favors." After a while, Wang Xing snorted coldly. His words were very rude. Seeing this, Lin Sun's black eyes flashed coldly. Without saying anything more, he stood up and revealed his figure from the dark. Wang Ziying's face suddenly darkened to the extreme. Was this guy really going to fight against them? Brother Wang, isn't it better? Let Demon Lin confront Tai Taoism. It's just like a sandpiper and a clam fighting each other. We just need to sit back and reap the benefits. Someone chuckled, revealing an excited expression. The others were also overjoyed. They were naturally happy to see Fiend Celestial Lin obediently lead the charge. Wang Ziying reacted quickly. His cold and gloomy face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a sneer. This Demon Lin was still too young. At the same time, on the Three-Life Rock, Tantai Lu had also suppressed his opponent. He had killed 5 people and escaped 6. His record was extremely beautiful. I'm not arrogant, but I'm really invincible. Tantai Lu laughed loudly. He was complacent and in high spirits. Senior brother Tantai is right. Who in the same generation can compete with him? Senior brother Tantai is like the bright moon in the sky. The others are just fireflies. How can they compete with you? The nearby successors of the Supreme One Dao sect all began to praise him, as if they were proud of him. Tantai Lu knew that this was flattery, but he still enjoyed it. He couldn't help laughing again and sighed. It's lonely at the top. Who can understand? Suddenly, he was stunned and noticed Lin Sun coming out from the dark. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Who are you? Do you also want to die?" A woman next to him said in surprise, "Senior brother Tantai, this guy is Demon Lin." Demon Lin. These 3 words seemed to have magical power, causing the atmosphere to suddenly become silent. It also made the faces of the other people of Tai Taoism change abruptly and their hearts tremble. Nowadays, whoever dared to say that they had not heard of the title of Demon Lin was absolutely useless. This was a fierce and ruthless person with shocking courage. He had massacred several famous mountains and blessed land. He was already famous in the ancient Desolation domain. It was impossible for the descendants of Tai Taoism not to know this. Therefore, when they saw Lin Sun appear, they all became vigilant. Sensing the change in the atmosphere, Tantai Lu couldn't help but frown. Especially when he saw that Lin Sun was alone, he became even more dissatisfied. Junior brothers and sisters, it's just a little Demon Lin. Why are you so embarrassed? Tantai Lu reprimanded, causing the others to look ashamed. Then, they all became courageous. Indeed, they had senior brother Tantai here, so what was there to be afraid of? Demon Lin, right? You are also a top figure, so I can be more lenient with you. Let me give you a piece of advice. Disappear now, otherwise today will be the day you lose your reputation. Tantai Lu raised his chin slightly, his eyes cold as he looked down at Lin Sun, who was walking over from the Three-Life Rock. Whether it was his words or his demeanor, there was a hint of frivolity. He was using this method to express his attitude towards Demon Lin. It was as if he was saying that they all feared Demon Lin, but he was not. Secretly, Wang Ziying and the others became excited and paid close attention. Who gave you the courage to speak to me like this? Lin Sun walked and floated into the void. He glanced indifferently at Tantai Lu and the others and said, "If any of you know where Wang Xuanyu is, I can let him go now and inform Wang Xuanyu." His words were casual, but Wang Ziying and the others couldn't help but be stunned. This guy was so arrogant. He didn't take Tantai Lu seriously at all, and he even named Wang Xuanyu. The descendants of the Tai Taoist sect all had a look of, "Did I hear wrong?" They were speechless. This Demon Lin was really as arrogant as the rumors said. However, he was destined to pay a heavy lesson this time. "You think I'm not as good as Wang Xuanyu?" Tantai Lu's expression was already extremely cold. His bright yellow robe was fluttering, and his whole body exuded a terrifying aura. Everyone's heart thumped, realizing that senior brother Tantai was angry. After all, he was the most dissatisfied with Wang Xuanyu. "I haven't seen Wang Xuanyu, but in my opinion, you are all the same. There is no difference." Lin Sun's words were casual, but in the ears of others, they seemed extremely arrogant. because everyone knew that whether it was Tantai Lu or Wang Xuanyu, they were all top figures among the peerless kings. Looking at the entire upper 9 realms, there were probably few who dared to evaluate them like this. Die! Tantai Lu couldn't bear it anymore. With a loud shout, he rushed up, releasing endless black Tao light. Boom! He waved his fist like a dragon, with the power to kill Zhou Su. He was even stronger than before. In the dark, the eyes of Wang Ziying and others flickered. They all saw that in the face of a great enemy like Demon God Lin, Tantai Lu did not lose his mind because of anger, but used a stronger means. The profundities deduced from this punch was sufficient to move anyone of the same generation. In an instant, Lin Sun judged that Tantai Lu's combat power was roughly the same as the 13th Golden Crow Prince, Wu Lingdao. To everyone's surprise, Tantai Lu's punch seemed to hit a wall of qi. Before it could get close to Lin Sun, it was blocked, making a dull explosion. Lin Sun, however, stood still, with a hint of playfulness in his eyes, like a monkey playing a trick. Tantai Lu's face darkened, and he roared. The power around his body surged, and the violent Tao light gathered in his palm, bursting out again. Boom! The fist energy broke through all obstacles and blasted straight at Lin Sun's head. However, at this moment, a brilliant tribulation word appeared in front of Lin Sun, and suddenly turned into a divine beast that soared into the air. Amidst an ear-piercing explosion, the glaring fist force was shattered, and Tantai Lu's entire body was sent flying. Chapter 1242. Thud! 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 Tantai Lu was knocked more than 30 meters away, and he took a few steps back before he managed to stabilize his figure. His face was already extremely livid, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. Everyone present was shocked. But before they could react, Tantai Lu had already let out a long roar and rushed forward again. Clang! A bright saber appeared in his hand, and it was covered in Taoist markings and flowing with divine brilliance. He slashed out. 8 storms slash. Wherever the blade pointed, there was a vast expanse of dazzling whiteness. The surrounding void exploded with a bang, and a shocking crack appeared. This was Tantai Lu's ultimate move, a saber technique with shocking killing power. Saber technique was a Taoist technique. When the saber slashed out, it seemed to be accompanied by the Great Way, causing heaven and earth to tremble. This attack made Lin Sun's black eyes light up. A snow-white ice dragon soared into the sky, and its roar was like a dragon as it coiled in the void. Boom! The saber light and Taoist light all over the sky exploded. The chaotic clouds collapsed, and the void was in disorder. Everyone gasped. Only when they saw it with their own eyes did they understand that Demon God Lin's current fierce reputation was not exaggerated. Swish! Tantai Lu rushed over again, his robe fluttering, and his long hair dancing wildly. His saber triggered the power of heaven and earth, causing ghosts and gods to cry, and all things to collapse. Ghost and God Yin-Yang saber split. This was another ultimate move. Moreover, Tantai Lu had obviously used his full strength. His power was terrifying, and his aura oppressed the surrounding people to the point of suffocation. Lin Sun still stood there without moving. A tribulation rune flashed out and transformed into the Swanee seal. It emitted the aura of a true dragon, and the oppressive pressure caused the heaven and earth to shake violently. Bang! The two collided, and the saber light collapsed like paper. Tantai Lu was almost hit by the Swanee seal, and he dodged in a sorry state. He had completely realized that his opponent was far stronger than he had imagined, but he was already in a difficult position at the moment, and he could only brace himself and continue fighting. For a time, the saber light crisscrossed like thousands of waterfalls dancing in the void, rolling like a raging sea, and had the power to drown all directions. It was so powerful that it made people's scalp numb. How could a peerless king who had stepped into the first tribulation of longevity be compared to an ordinary person when he attacked in rage? But all these efforts were in vain in front of Lin Sun. Merely circulating the Tribulation Dragon's 9 transformations allowed him to be invulnerable to all techniques, and he destroyed all of Tantai Lu's attacks with indescribable ease and ease. From beginning to end, Lin Sun didn't move at all. The successors of the Greater One Dao sect were completely dumbfounded. Previously, when they were reprimanded by Tantai Lu, they felt rather ashamed. They believed that with Tantai Lu around, there was no need to fear Fiend Celestial Lin. Who would have thought that Tantai Lu would not even be able to touch a single piece of Fiend Celestial Lin's robes, even after giving it her all? In the dark, the expressions of Wang Ziying and the others were also uncertain. Earlier, they held the thought of sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight, and they rather took pleasure in Chen Shi's misfortune as they felt that they could reap the benefits without doing anything. But now they realized that they were wrong. When 2 tigers fought, they were at least evenly matched. However, in front of Fiend God Lin, Tantai Lu was at best a paper tiger. Was Tantai Lu not strong? No, with his combat strength, it was enough to make Wang Ziying and the others extremely fearful. Otherwise, he would not have been hiding in the dark and not daring to show up to fight Tantai Lu. But now, Tantai Lu could not gain any advantage in the battle. This could only prove that it was not that he was not strong, but that Fiend Celestial Lin was too powerful. What are you waiting for? Attack together! Suddenly, Tantai Lu roared. At this moment, his face was extremely livid, and his eyes were about to pop out of his sockets. He was like a furious beast. Compared to his previously complacent and high-spirited self, it was as if he was a completely different person. He was like a completely different person. Boom! The other 4 successors of the Greater One Dao sect did not have the time to think too much and attacked brazenly. They all knew that if they did not attack now, it would be difficult for them to stay alive, let alone occupy the 3 Lives Rock and comprehend the ancient scripture. Kill. As soon as they attacked, the successors of the Greater One Dao sect used their full strength and did not dare to hold back at all. For a time, there was a surge of divine radiance and the light of treasures. The scene was astonishing as the indescribable Taoist techniques and the dazzling treasures interweave. One had to admit that the overall strength of the Greater One Dao sect was very strong. Each of the 4 successors had the battle strength to hold their own and could not be underestimated. With their addition, Tantai Lu immediately felt the pressure on him lighten. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun was not alarmed even though he was fighting 1 against 5. Instead, he revealed a smile and said, "That's more like it." Boom! Without any hesitation, he moved from stillness and charged forward like a dragon that had emerged from an abyss. In his palm, he performed the 9 strikes for shaking the heavens. Around him were resplendent tribulation symbols that seemed as if they were made of divine gold. He was like a fiend celestial. The battle had reached an unprecedentedly intense stage. Get ready. No matter who wins later, it will be the best time to snatch the 3 Lives Rock. Secretly, Wang Ziying took a deep breath and quickly sent a voice transmission. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the others as they nodded in agreement. Remember, once you attack, you must go all out. Be especially careful of that Fiend Celestial Lin. That fellow is an extremely difficult person to deal with. If you become enemies with him, Wang Ziying was still worried and continued to warn them. However, before he could finish his words, he stopped abruptly and his eyeballs almost fell out. That was because the battle had taken a shocking turn. Boom! Lin Sun's body surged with divine brilliance as he punched out 4 times in a row. Each punch had the power to sweep through the universe and was unstoppable. The 4 successors of Tai Taoism were blown away one by one. Blood spurted from their mouths and noses, and their bodies almost exploded as they let out shrill screams. The siege was thus resolved. It only took a dozen breaths from start to finish. Wang Ziying's hands and feet were cold. Even the siege could not suppress the ferocity of Fiend Celestial Lin. His companions were also shocked at this moment. they turned pale with fright and began to waver in their hearts. Previously, they had thought of taking this opportunity to attack and reap the good fortune. Who would have thought that the strength of Fiend Celestial Lin had completely exceeded their expectations? How could they make a move now? In contrast, Tantai Lu was even more frightened. Previously, Lin Sun had not moved at all and was passively receiving his attacks. Therefore, although he knew that Lin Sun was extremely powerful, he did not know exactly how powerful he was. But now he understood. Facing Lin Sun's attack, he felt as if he was being suppressed by a god. There was an unprecedented sense of suffocating oppression, and he felt extremely powerless. Even if he used everything he had, he could not shake Lin Sun in the slightest. How could he be so powerful? Before Tantai Lu could figure it out, an ancient and vigorous fist force broke through the air with the power to crush everything. Just the momentum contained in the fist force made Tantai Lu's hair stand on end, and he felt a fatal danger. Without hesitation, he withdrew and retreated at an extremely fast speed. Bang! But even so, his body was still swept by the fist force. He immediately felt as if he had been slapped by the hand of God. His internal organs were almost shattered, and he bled from the shock of his 7 orifices. He did not know how many tendons and bones in his body were broken. Seeing this scene, Wang Ziying and the others had the urge to turn around and flee. Too powerful. Just looking at it from afar made them feel an indescribable sense of fear. Go! Tantai Lu roared, blood still dripping from his lips. He led the other successors of Tai Taoism and chose to flee. There was no way to fight anymore. Lin Sun's strength had destroyed their fighting spirit. How could they dare to fight with their lives? Tell Wang Xuanyu that I have something to talk to him face to face. Let him get ready. Lin Sun did not chase after him. At that time, Wang Xuanyu took away a congenital Taoist fire that Lin Sun had his eyes on in the stone tower, but he did not kill Old Toad. Naturally, Lin Sun would not do such a thing. He had a clear distinction between gratitude and grudges and disdained to kill indiscriminately. In the distance, Tantai Lu and the others had all fled and disappeared. No one knew whether they had heard Lin Sun's words or not. But no matter what, this time, Lin Sun must seek justice for Old Toad and vent his anger. Lin Sun's figure floated down on the 3-life rock, looked up at the darkness and said, "Everyone, don't you want to compete for the fortune? You can start now." The faces of Wang Ziying and the others suddenly became gloomy and hesitant. If they left like this, they would be extremely unwilling in their hearts. But if they didn't leave, they had no confidence to defeat Lin Sun, so they were in a dilemma. Just now, didn't you say that I didn't know how to appreciate favors? And you threatened me in every way. Why are you scared now? Lin Sun's voice was indifferent, and he did not hide his disdain. Taoism Peer Lin, we just wanted to cooperate with you before and make friends with you. Why do you have to say these sarcastic words? Wang Ziying took a deep breath and said with a gloomy face, "Ha ha." Lin Sun laughed and his black eyes were cold. He said, "Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You just want to take advantage of the situation. Now I'll give you a chance. Do you dare to come and fight?" His voice was flat, but there was a sense of sonorous disdain in it, echoing in the void. Wang Ziying was suddenly speechless, and his face changed. "Demon Lin, are you really going to be our enemy?" A young man was furious. He felt humiliated by Lin Sun too much. "Get out!" Lin Sun's lips suddenly burst out in a loud voice, like a cattail roaring at the universe. It was just one word, but the young man staggered and his face turned pale. He was so shocked that he almost fell to the ground. It was so embarrassing that the young man was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. "Do you think people like you are qualified to be my enemy?" Lin Sun sneered. "Let's go." Wang Ziying gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and made a decision. They had been shocked by Lin Sun's power. Even if they went to fight, they had no chance of winning. Who let you go? Lin Sun said indifferently. Wang Ziying and others changed their faces and their hearts sank to the bottom. They realized that Demon Lin didn't intend to let them go at all. You've got this ancient scripture, and we don't want to haggle over it. What else do you want? Wang Ziying's face was livid. You can be spared from death, but you can't escape punishment. I always distinguish kindness and hatred. You've offended me. If you just leave like this, how will the world think of me? Chapter 1243. Lin Sun's words made the expressions of Wang Ziying and the rest turn extremely ugly. What a joke! Do you really think we're afraid of you? Someone could not help but speak harshly. This was going too far. They had already decided to retreat and not get involved in this matter, but Demon God Lin was still relentless. What did he think they were? As peerless king powerhouses, every one of them was extremely proud. Clang! Lin Sun did not speak and only slashed out with his broken blade. Silence chop! With a puff, the arrogant person in the distance did not even have time to react before his head was chopped off. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Wang Ziying and the rest gasped, their hands and feet cold. Only then did they realize one thing. Based on Demon God Lin's past deeds, he was definitely a fearless fellow. The scene before their eyes proved this point. A peerless king's head had been taken in an instant. I don't want to waste any more time. As punishment, each of you hand over one divine herb and you can leave. Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. This was the divine underworld palace. The three-life rock was too big a target. The longer it was delayed, the more powerful powerhouses would covet it. There was dead silence. Wang Ziying and the rest gritted their teeth in hatred. Did this guy think divine herbs were rotten cabbages? But when they met Lin Sun's cold gaze, although they were indignant and humiliated, they still chose to lower their heads. Floating sun divine vine. 9 turns soul transformation flower. Feather purple green fruit. Shenluo silvestar grass. There were a total of 4 divine herbs of immeasurable value. But to Lin Sun, these divine herbs were only mediocre or inferior. None of them could compare to the yin-yang divine lotus. But seeing them obediently lower their heads and cooperate, Lin Sun did not intend to continue taking revenge. He waved his hand and dismissed them like dispersing flies. Before leaving, Wang Ziying and the rest were filled with hatred and anger. But the situation was against their control, so they could only endure it. They did not even dare to say a harsh word lest Lin Sun target them again. Lin Sun also knew that these guys already hated him. If there was a chance, they would definitely take revenge. But he did not care. With his current combat strength, he did not fear the grudges of these unbearable opponents. Would an eagle care about the grudges of ants? Of course not. This little episode didn't even make waves in Lin's heart. He looked at an ancient scripture engraved on the three-life rock. When he looked at it from a close distance, he could feel the mysteriousness of this scripture even more. Its characters were twisted like earthworms, cryptic and mysterious, flowing with Tao light. The most miraculous thing was that the densely packed characters were surging like living creatures. An ordinary cultivator would absolutely be bewildered by it because even though this scripture was miraculous, it was extremely obscure, and it was utterly impossible to comprehend any profundities from it. It was to the extent that he couldn't even force himself to memorize it, because the words of this ancient scripture were constantly changing and flowing. No wonder only Tantai Lu and the others are fighting for the ancient scripture here. Wang Xuanyu must have realized that although this scripture is miraculous, it can't be taken away and memorized. Trying to decipher and comprehend its mysteries is bound to consume too much time. Lin Sun had a glimmer of enlightenment. There was obviously more than one fortuitous encounter in the Nether God Palace, and a figure like Wang Xuanyu would naturally not waste all his energy and time here. However, there was a smile on Lin Sun's lips at the moment. Because he happened to know how to comprehend such ancient scripture, clatter, the huge power of divine awareness spread out and poured into the ancient scripture engraved on the stone like thousands of tentacles. Lines of dense and twisted earthworms fluttered and danced along different trajectories. They were extremely complicated and messy, which gave people a headache. When the divine awareness tried to capture these characters, they would disappear in a flash, which made people anxious. However, Lin Sun didn't care about this. In his divine awareness, these ancient characters were like spiritual tattoos. Although they were ever-changing and untraceable, as long as he arranged and reorganized them one by one, he could see through their trajectories, capture and summarize them one by one. If that was all, other cultivators could certainly do it. The difficulty was that each ancient character represented a completely different meaning. If one didn't understand its mysteries, it was destined to be impossible to arrange and reorganize them into an ancient scripture. However, this was still not a problem for Lin Sun. The next moment, he used his divine awareness as a brush and gently drew a light and graceful trajectory on the ancient scripture engraved on the stone. Then, an amazing scene appeared. The ancient characters that were originally flying in the stone seemed to be attracted, and began to draw close to the trajectory drawn by Lin Sun. Like a shoal of fish finding bait, they began to converge. Lin Sun kept waving his divine awareness, and more ancient characters gathered. Later, the dense ancient characters began to wander and fly along the trajectory drawn by Lin Sun. At this moment, Lin Sun's divine awareness suddenly stopped like the tip of a pen. A strange roar sounded from the stone. Countless earthworm-like ancient characters jumped out of the pattern and rushed to the sea of consciousness along Lin Sun's divine awareness. Boom! Suddenly, Lin Sun's sea of consciousness shook fiercely and was filled with various ancient characters. They kept gathering and shining. In the end, they turned into a beautiful ancient scripture. Lin Sun took a long breath. When he entered the gate to heaven for the first time and passed the first test of Green Cloud Path, he encountered a similar test. It was a flowing light spiritual tattoo. In the end, it was actually a cultivation technique. It was just that someone used spiritual tattoos to completely integrate the mystery of the cultivation method into the veins and trajectories of each spiritual tattoo. This ancient scripture engraved on the stone was exactly the same as flowing light spiritual tattoo, so it was not difficult for Lin Sun. But soon, Lin Sun was shocked and a little stunned. Because the name of this ancient scripture was Great Meditating Magic, and the cultivation method he got from flowing light spiritual tattoo was meditating magic. No wonder even the way of meditation is so similar. It turns out that there is some kind of echo and connection between them. Lin Sun realized that this was not a coincidence. The real coincidence was that he didn't expect to get great meditating magic in the Hall of God of Underworld. This way. In the distance, there was a sound of breaking through the air, which woke Lin Sun from his meditation. He had no time to think more and rushed to the distance. Not long after Lin Sun left, a group of strong figures appeared. "Come on," the ancient scripture engraved on the Three Lives rock. "There is no one here." When these experts rushed over, they were a bit surprised. Then, they were overjoyed and hurriedly rushed up the Three-Life cliff. But the next moment they were dumbfounded. Because that place was empty since a long time ago. That incomparably mystical ancient scripture diagram had been taken away by someone a long time ago. Instantly, the joy that these powerhouses were feeling disappeared without a trace. Cutting the soul to refine the Three Lives godly form? On the way, Lin Sun perceived a little and understood the mystery of great meditating magic. It turned out to be a kind of inheritance of cutting one's soul and refining the Three Lives godly form. What was the Three Lives? Previous life, present life, and future life. That was the past, the present, and the future. And the great netherworld divine art was a secret technique that divided a cultivator's primordial spirit into three, turning it into three primordial spirits, and cultivating the past, present, and future respectively. If it were in the past, Lin Sun would definitely be confused. After all, the spirit was the foundation of the king's longevity. A little damage may affect the practitioner's cultivation. Not to mention cutting the spirit and dividing it into 3 parts. It was just like self-mutilation. But for Lin Sun, whose spiritual power had reached the 2nd level of gathering of divine flowers, this great meditating magic was unprecedented and magical, because the state of gathering flowers in prominence was divided into 3 realms, namely the past, the present, and the future. Every time a practitioner cultivated a new realm, a flower of Tao would be condensed in his spirit, which represented the essence of the 3 lives. From this point of view, the practice of great meditating magic was to divide the spirit into 3 parts and let 3 different spirits comprehend different realms. Wonderful, it was really wonderful. Lin Sun was extremely amazed and realized that this great meditating magic was absolutely an incredible peerless inheritance. If he could really cultivate it successfully, it was very likely that he would go further on the road of immortality, because the core of the lantern-like soul was the secret of immortality. If it weren't in the divine underworld palace, Lin Sun would have impulsively wanted to cultivate this scripture. Found it. Before long, Lin Sun came to a blood river. This was the true river of blood. The surging blood-colored river water surged majestically. It was unknown where it began and where it ended, as if it would last for eternity. As soon as it arrived, there was a suffocating oppressive wave that enveloped this side of the world. Even with Lin Sun's strength, his whole body was tense and his mind was awe-inspiring. Looking carefully, in the sky on the other side of the blood river, there were blood clouds gathering. In the clouds and mist, there was an extremely magnificent blood altar. Unfortunately, it seemed to be separated by a blood river. Even if Lin Sun observed it with his spiritual awareness, he couldn't see what it was at all. It was shrouded with a frightening sacred breath, which isolated the spiritual awareness. It was also here that Lin Sun felt the breath belonging to Tantai Lu. Before, when he defeated Tantai Lu, he had already stamped his own mark on Tantai Lu without a trace. Now he just came here according to the map. It seems that Wang Xuanyu and others are on the other side of the blood river. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. Clatter, in the blood river, a black boat suddenly appeared, and a skeleton boatman came with a white bone oar. Seeing this familiar scene, Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned. Could it be that the blood lake they saw before was connected to the blood river in front of them? Lin Sun looked carefully again and found that he was right. It was the black boat and the skeleton boatman he had seen before. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, along with the appearance of the black boat, figures of experts appeared one after another from the other areas of the blood river, and all of them converged in this direction. "Hurry up, the ghost boat is coming," someone shouted. "If we can't get on the boat this time, the heaven-defying fortune on the other side will be completely taken away by the strong who crossed the boat earlier." These strong people had obviously been waiting for a long time. Seeing the black boat appear, they all couldn't wait.